And with the BBC News at 10 o'clock, this is Stephen Davis. Two 17-year-old boys have been charged with murdering a third teenager in Sheffield. Adam Abdul-Basit, who was 19, was found with a stab wound in the Woodhouse area of the city last Monday. A teenage boy who was rescued from a river in Leicestershire has died. Firefighters were called to the River Soar near Loughborough last night after 4 boys got into difficulty. 3 were pulled to safety. The Energy Secretary Grant Shapps has defended Rishi Sunak's record as Prime Minister as criticism grows from within the Conservative Party. Yesterday, the former Home Secretary Priti Patel told a conference organised by prominent allies of Boris Johnson that decisions taken in Westminster were to blame for the poor local election results across England. But Mr Shapps told the BBC's Sunday with Laura Koonsberg programme that the broad range of voices was the sign of a healthy party.
I think this is a party that still, after years in government, and despite having to put up with things like the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and all the costs attached to it, is actually buzzing with ideas.
Really?
We're able to get together and we're able to hold conferences and have different ideas come forward.
The Royal College of Nursing says the government needs to restart pay negotiations with them and offer a double-digit rise. The RCN is balloting its members for more strike action after they rejected a 5% salary increase. A government source told the BBC its offer was final. Flights at Gatwick Airport were suspended for nearly an hour this afternoon because of a suspected drone sighting. The airport said 12 inbound flights were diverted elsewhere. It has now reopened. The Women's FA Cup was won by Chelsea for the 3rd year in a row. Sam Kerr scored the only goal against Manchester United in front of a sellout Wembley crowd. The Chelsea manager, Emma Hayes, wasn't overly impressed with her side's performance.
First half, I think it was there to be won for Man United. We looked sluggish, we turned the ball over, slow to do almost anything we'd set out to do. So half-time came a moment for us to reset. And then the finishers came from the bench, and I thought the second half, that's where we won the game, with a moment of brilliance from Pernille Harder and Sam Kerr.
Meanwhile, in the Premier League, Arsenal's title challenge is almost over after they lost 3-0 to Brighton at the Emirates. The defeat for Mikel Arteta's side means that Manchester City can win the league if they triumph in their next match. Today, Man City beat Everton 3-0 at Goodison Park. Brentford beat West Ham 2-0. And in the Championship playoffs, it finished goalless between Coventry City and Middlesbrough in the first leg of their semi-final tie. The second leg is being played on Wednesday. And the late Queen's appearance with Paddington Bear during celebrations for her Jubilee Platinum has won the Memorable Moment category at the BAFTAs. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 10.
Sparky, oh Sparky.
Who's that?
Sick. I don't know why that makes me giggle. It always does. Good evening. How are you?
BBC Radio Manchester.
I'm Allan Beswick. We're back being a sort of triumvirate. It's 3, if you're wondering. Yeah, so Radio Merseyside with us this evening, Radio Manchester, of course, Radio Lancashire, of course, and on with the motley, as they say. There's also 3 in the team. Oh, it's all about triangles. Talat is producing, Luke's taking the calls, Jason's doing the buttons, and... oh, no, that's 4. Oh, well, never mind. Arithmetic was never my strong suit. Chartered accountant, I'd never be. But anyway, it's good to be here, and I hope you'll join us on 0800 218 2255. And as usual, you may talk about absolutely anything. In the paper today, Gary Goldsmith, who he? Well, I'll tell you, he be the King's son's mother-in-law's brother, which, if nothing else, is an awful lot of apostrophes. Anyway, Gary poses the question, why did Harry fly back for Archie's birthday? Well, let's be facing it, you get one of them every year, but your dad becoming king, well, that's a one-off. The answer is simple, as is the prince. Whereas Gary, until now, and I suspect for evermore, is nobody, but, well, he went straight back because he's barmy. We've worked out that he's balmy, or at least disgruntled, and wishes to spend as little time with his no longer nearest and dearest as is at all possible. And there's a story knocking about that on his dash, his mad dash to catch the flight back to America, he stocked up at Buck House for a wee. It's too good to check, that's all I can say. Presumably he's a bit concerned about the crown jewels. He is. After being shamed, come on, that's what happened. After being shamed into allowing women into the front line, or the front line regiments at least, the army reports that only 50 out of the 18,000 infantry are female. 50 out of 18,000. Now, the right for them to be there is and should be sacrosanct, of course it is. But the thousands of pounds spent on publicity to recruit women into such regiments may well have been better spent on bullets, of which apparently there is a shortage. And my heart was warmed this week after a Boeing 727 crashed in the Mexican desert. Now, I'm not being cruel. No one was hurt. The crew bailed out, and the whole idea was to eventually crash the plane into the Mexican desert. It hit the ground at 140 miles per hour. It's a scientific experiment, the objective of which was to find out that in the event of a plane actually falling out of the sky in service, where's the safest place to be sat? Well, I think we all knew this, but this kind of proves it, or goes some way to proving it. It's the back. It's safest sit at the back. In the event of the plane falling out of the sky, you are safest if you're sat at the back. If it's doing, as this was, 140 miles an hour, and it falls from 20,000 feet, quite frankly, whether you're at the back or the front, you're a corpse. But it's safest at the back, apparently. Now, why did that give me a warm feeling? Kind of cruel, really. But the rich and famous tend to travel first class. And first class on most airlines is at the front. So they're paying about 10 times the price for their ticket, buying the most expensive glass of champagne on the planet, and putting themselves in greater danger. So just because you're rich doesn't mean you're not stupid. And Liverpool woke up this morning with, should we call it an excitement headache? Is that fair? I bet there were quite a lot of headaches from various sources, but an excitement headache from all that loud music, all that cheering, and no doubt a scoop or two. But they also woke up with a massively enhanced reputation. And the rest of us wakes up with the knowledge that, well, this tune we're about to play is the second worst song in Europe, just waiting to be forgotten. May Muller, I thought it was she. I wrote a song. Maybe she did, but perhaps she could have got somebody else to sing it by all accounts. Or at the very least, given that it's not always the song that matters at Eurovision, at the very least, she could have let her fingernails grow a lot longer, because a woman... It's not bad, is it? It's certainly not, from what little I saw of it. I only saw an hour. But it's not the worst. Certainly not the very worst, and not the next worst song that was on display last night. But there you are. You know, it's not exactly democratic, but you know what I mean when I say it's all in the voting. And the truth is, they didn't like it. They didn't like it, them Europeans. Where's Corporal? Where's the corporal? They didn't like it up him, Captain. What was his name? Anyway, there you go. Not so good. 0800 218 2255 is the number. So 0800 218 2255. You talk about anything with it. Here till 1 o'clock in the morning. So there's no rush. Take your time, or come along straight away. We don't mind. But let us begin either way. How do Ricky?
How do you, Mr. Beswick? I would think it was it was a tough call last night, but because a certain part, not be derogative, because Sweden at the most, the last vote, but I rather as a sing-off, you know, I think it was a dark horse in third place. They should have had a sing-off between them two, Finland and Sweden. No. I would have gone for... If there was a good singer or singers, I think it should have been a sing-off. But I heard the votes and...
Between who?
It was good. It was good and funny as well.
Who would you have had the sing-off between? You're not going to have the sing-off between the first and the next to last, are you? So who would you have had involved?
If there's a first... Well, if it'd be Finland and Sweden, and it was the third place, so basically them three, and it goes down to the judges then, not the public vote, because I think it was wrong, not being derogative, because who would... Because it was every 12 points to... but fair play to them, and fair play to Ukraine, and it was well addressed and very emotional for me as well. Not about the no one who got a nub for. It was great though, and but it's just emotional, and at the end of the
evening competition.
It was great. And they all sung one by one, come out and sang their songs, and it was, it was funny in a way, though. No, in a way it was funny, but it was emotional for, because they couldn't take to Russia, so I had to live in Liverpool, and I take out to Liverpool as well. I do, and it was great, and I enjoyed it, and great notices as usual. Yeah, I'll give you before I go. I'm going to sing a song. Don't worry, it's not going to be happy, and I won't break people's hearts. But it goes like this. Sweet Caroline. Da, da, da.
Right, okay, well, thank you very much. Yes, takes all sorts, doesn't it? And wouldn't that be marvellous? We've all said Liverpool did incredibly well, and... the competition was spectacular, the staging was spectacular, and let's be honest, the BBC did a cracking job. But then in that kind of arena, they do. How do Paul?
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm awfully well, thank you.
I don't believe it's a lot. When you used to do it every night?
Well, I used to be 5 nights a week. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
You figure out it must be a lot for you to do, and mustn't it? 5 nights a week, 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning.
It's only 3 hours. These people used to go down the pit for longer than that.
But, I mean, has it got on you as you're just doing it Saturday and Sunday, or have they told you to do that?
Oh, they made the decisions. I'm just a gob on a stick, Paul.
So they've said you're only doing 2, and yet you're very popular.
Well, some say. Well, most people can't bear it.
Well, I think you stay with people, and you try to help them as well. I mean, that song what you just played, is that the one what won?
No, that was the UK song. That came second from last.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about the Who strike, but I can talk a bit about this as well. But I want to talk mainly about the Who strike, you see.
Well, you choose your subject, that's how the programme works, and then pick the one...
Well, I want to talk the railway strike then.
OK, well, go on then.
Pardon?
I said go on then.
What do you think about it, and how long can it last for? Because people are being inconvenient. People... sometimes they can't go to the job because they live in London and they can't get there. So what they do, they lose the job, some people. You know what I mean?
That may be so. But the problem with all strikes is that the worker, all that the worker provides is labour for money. The service... making the trains run, making the radio run, making the hospitals run. The service is the responsibility of the employer, and they give money to people to do their work for them. And if the people who are the workers don't think they're being treated right or getting paid properly, then they say, right, we're not doing it anymore, we're going on strike, and that is their right.
Well, up to now, there's 2 companies have lost their licence. 2 companies.
Yeah.
But they, you know what I mean? So it could happen, but say, I mean, I blame the government myself, because the government are putting things, you're buying VAT on fuel and all that sort of stuff. Nurses, they have to go to food banks. Well, how can that be right? You know what I mean?
Well, it's not me you need to tell, it's the government that needs to be told, if anybody does.
The government's supposed to be getting around and talking to the unions properly.
Well, in many cases, the government is refusing to speak with the unions on the basis that the government isn't the employer. The employer is the rail company or the National Health Service or what have you.
Well, you know, when they privatise things, in that the government then, same as all the buses now, they're going to get privatised and they're going to be all the same colour and there's going to be £2 any journey and £1 for kids.
Well, I don't think the buses are going to be privatised, apart from in London. They have been privatised some years ago. I think it was...
Who owns them?
I'm sorry?
Who owns the buses in London?
The buses in London are operated by London Transport, or Transport for London. But everywhere else, the buses are privatised and owned by whatever company happens to own them.
Well, there is some buses being taken up, like Go Northwest. They're taking over Diamond now.
Right. Well, that happens with private companies. Other companies come along and absorb them, buy them out, as it were.
Yeah. In other words, if you cut out your competition, then don't you? Because there is none of you buy that company over.
Well, they're no longer your competitor. But what you actually do is you save money. You buy them out, and you can run 2 companies for more or less the same administration costs as running one. So you enhance your possibility of making a profit. Yeah.
Do you think this strike will have to come to an end some stage or other? Because people are being hit, aren't they? They can't get to work.
Well, all strikes so far have come to an end, so all the strikes that are on at the moment will eventually stop. How the end will be brought about remains to be seen.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a fellow who works on the railway. He said it's not about. I said, what about the train drivers? They get higher money than you. He said, well, it's nothing to do with that. But on the wireless, it was Radio 4, because I listened to it in the morning. They said that it's about what do you call it? You know, when they want to make it so they're laying off. In other words, they don't have conductors on the train.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that's been striked about over time. They want to just have drivers instead of drivers and conductors, which would be a saving for the company. It happened in the bus industry years ago when they went from 2-person operation to 1-person operation, which is why you don't have conductors on buses anymore.
Yeah. On the trains, you see, it saved it. I mean, there's different... I'm all right. I have a little scooter, so I have to get a ramp. Now, some people have actually fallen down between the platforms. Now, if they put drivers only, he's not going to be able to watch all these people. There was one, what a conductor was telling me. There was a woman, and she fell down, and only for that quick thinking guide, she might have been really injured, but he got her up without any trouble. The driver won't do that, well, he won't be able to.
Won't be able to, no. So people have to be more careful anyway. Good to hear from you, Paul. I'll do Ray.
I'll do Alan. I'd like to talk about Donald Trump.
Okay.
I think it's a disgrace, this witch hunt that seems to be taking place against him. There's the court case the other day when the woman was awarded about $5 million. There's the disputed election result, which he still insists he should be in the White House. I think people are just so jealous of him because he's such a successful person. He wasn't even a politician, and yet he rose to being the most powerful man in the world when he was president. It can't have been easy for him when he was growing up with a name like Donald Trump. I'm sure that the kids were saying that, he's named after a duck and a tharp. But perhaps it's that name that helped make him strong. A little bit like the Johnny Cash number, the boy named Sue. But I just think it's a disgrace, the witch hunt that seems to be taking place.
Do you think it's a disgrace that a jury in a civil trial, it's not a criminal trial, but a jury in a civil trial were convinced by the evidence and decided that he'd assaulted a woman sexually?
Yes, I do. I think it's just jealousy. Well, $5 million.
Well,
I think you'd be tempted to go with Donald. If you got $5 million.
The sum is one thing, and the amount of money awarded is one thing. But before any money, you don't get a penny if you lose your case. But the woman won her case.
But it's subject to an appeal.
Well, indeed it is.
But grounds for an appeal.
Well, we don't know whether there are grounds. Certainly, it is subject to appeal at the moment. But as it stands at the moment, she won. Now, Trump could have put in a defence, but as far as I'm aware, didn't do so. So, at the moment, he is guilty of that which he was accused. Now he'll say I didn't do it, but he won't be going to prison over it. It's civil, but the prisons are full of people. The prisons are full of people who said they didn't do it. And yes, she didn't manage to convince, or the lawyers didn't manage to convince the jury that he raped her. But sexual assault is a serious offence, and he's been found in a civil court guilty of that.
As I say, I think it's just people are so jealous of him because he's so successful. He's got an aircraft with his name on it. Just people are so jealous because he's so successful.
But
I wish that we had someone like him running this country.
I'm sure you do. But Ray, there are lots and lots of people who are successful who haven't had anybody come along and say he sexually molested me.
But perhaps those people have not been as successful as being the most powerful man in the world, which Donald Trump was for a while.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, I'm just trying to get your opinion right. As far as you're concerned, the fact that he is convicted in a civil court of sexually assaulting a woman, you think you can just disregard that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think you can out of jealousy.
Okay. That's fine. Just as long as we know, just keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Have a good night. How do Lindsay?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to talk about parking at hospitals.
Okay.
It's just crazy. You can't get a parking space. I had to go on Friday, but I had to get a taxi because you take into consideration all the staff that they've got, and then all the appointments, and there's just everybody's moaning about the parking at hospitals. And I think they should be made. The building new departments, they should make more multi-storey parking.
Well, yeah, that would be a cracking idea. The trouble is, the money would have to come out of the health budget, and that would mean that some of those new departments, as you describe them, which presumably have a medical need, wouldn't get built. So we wouldn't have a new heart unit, but we'd have a nice car park.
Yeah. Just one more thing. Britain's Got Talent.
I'm aware of it. I've never seen it.
Well, why do they call it Britain's Got Talent when people enter from other countries?
You would ask to ask them that. I've no idea. I didn't know that happened.
Well, it does.
Well, you will have to ask. You must ask whoever produces it. I think it's ITV.
They are good, the people that enter from other countries, but I don't understand why it's called Britain's Got Talent.
I've no idea. I've got nothing to offer other than, if it concerns you, then address your question to those that make it.
Okay, then. Thank you.
Right. Good on you, Lindsay. How do Tony?
Hey, Alan, you okay?
I'm very well, thank you.
Now, the armed services, armed forces, the police and fire brigade, they can all retire at the age of 50 on a full salary pension. Well, they used to. They might not now. Why wasn't minors allowed to do that?
I've no idea.
These are the guys that put the life on the line. And roofers and fishermen. The most dangerous job in the world is fishermen. But they had to work till they were 65.
Right, I suppose it comes down to the ability, the collective ability of the employees to negotiate.
Good answer. So what you're saying, they should have gone on strike to try and retire at 50, like the police, armed forces and all that?
Well, I'm not saying that, no. It's not for me to advise them. I'm saying that the employees collectively are entitled to ask for different, one would always ask for better, one hopes, for better circumstances. And if the employer says you're not having them, then they have the right to withdraw their labour. But you have to fight the fight you think you can win, I guess.
And the miners withdrew their labour.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with Margaret Thatcher?
They lost.
Police were truncheons and all the rest of it.
Well, they lost. That's what happened.
Who lost?
The miners.
So you're saying they should have gone out and fight for the right?
No, I'm not saying anything. They had a dispute, a very serious dispute, that is still very much in contention in books and papers and plays and films and all the rest of it. But there's no way around it. They lost.
Right, they lost. So why don't they do that with the firemen and all the rest of it and make them work till they were 65 and give them more money?
Well, I don't know is the answer to that. But decisions are made and by employers and governments, and if the employees don't agree with those decisions, they must fight. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And the miners lost. The fishermen is very difficult because most fishermen, I believe, are effectively self-employed. They work on a share basis. So when they go out, the catch they make, when they come back, it is divided up according to a preordained plan. So the profit is divided up. Obviously, the skipper gets more because he or she's got to run the boat, and then it's divided up accordingly. So they're self-employed, so their pensions are whatever contribution they make to the state pension. So it's slightly different for them. And yes, it is an extraordinarily dangerous job, but they are self-employed, for the time being at least.
What, do you agree that the police and all the rest of them should finish at 50 years old?
I neither agree nor disagree. I think the police have managed to negotiate that position. The forces, it's always been the case that after the age of 40, unless you're, I think it's above one in the army that were called field officer rank, you have to retire because they don't really want 74-year-old blokes like me running around with a rifle because it's not really safe. So that's got a fitness requirement, and I suspect that's similar in the fire service. Whether you want to be carried out of a burning building down a shaky ladder by a bloke going, "Can you just find me Zimmer before we go?" I don't know whether that quite works. So possibly that are the reasons for that. But in the end, as I say, it comes down to what you're prepared to negotiate.
I think the figure, Alan, was 22 years active service and all the rest of it to get your full pension.
Yes.
But they can go back behind the desk if they're not serving. They can still go behind the desk in the office.
Who are they and who are you referring to now?
Yeah, the armed services, the air forces, the fire brigade, everybody.
Well, no, it's not. No. I believe in the services, unless you're above a certain rank, when you reach the end of your period, you are gone. It's not a case of, oh, well, we'll give you an office job. In the army, office jobs are there for squaddies to do anyway. So that's slightly different. The senior officers, they remain, but they never do out. They just sit there having meetings. So senior officers, fine. But the active squaddie, when he or she reaches, I think the age is 40, it might be 42, but I think when they reach that age, that's it, they're finished. End. Thank you, goodbye. Warrant officer class 1, finished.
Do you not think that's a bit too young?
I don't know. I don't know whether a person 42 has the capacity that a person 22 has. And there's more than one capacity involved. There's the physical capacity, and yes, you can stay fit, but your chances of having the same lung capacity are perhaps diminished. But also, you've got to a stage where you are less likely to just do as you're told. By the time we get 42, most of us are starting, if we haven't been doing it for years, to think for ourselves, and that's not really something they want in the armed forces.
All right, Alan.
Squaddy's just a gun with legs.
Yeah, but they still like to fight till they were 65, a lot of them, I think.
Well, just because they'd like it, don't mean they can.
They fight on, but they could just get to
I'd like to talk crap at the dead of night until I'm 110, but my guess is they're not going to let me.
Alan, there's one record you might be able to play later. 3 Wheels on My Wagon.
Oh, yes, very good song. And I'm just rolling along. The Cherokees are after me.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be allowed anymore. I think it's a bit against the indigenous American.
It's a cracking record. I remember it many a time in the 60s.
Indeed.
And I don't know the end of it. The thing is, I don't know the end of it. I know he had one wheel on his wagon.
Indeed. And I suspect at that point he ran out of options.
He was still rolling along.
I don't know. I can't remember now. It's like you say, it was the 60s.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, Alan, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Have a good night. I, of course, didn't retire at 45 or 42 or 62 or even 72. How do Kpana?
Hello, I am doing fine. You know, I enjoyed the Coronation, King Charles Coronation. I watched it for 5.5 hours non-stop. And then I sent him a congratulations card for King Charles and Queen Camilla. And then I phoned in India my eldest daughter. She is a writer. And she has written few books also. I said, can you write a poetry, few lines for King Charles? And she sent me this one. I'm going to read. It's a very short one.
Okay.
King Charles Coronation poem. King Charles, the world looks to as you ascend the throne with a rich legacy that you will now call your own. A fabulous day for all of us to see as you take the crown with dignity. May your reign be blessed with harmony and peace, with a vision for unity that will never cease. Congratulations, King Charles, on this special day. We pray for your success every step of the day, every step of the way. Yeah. So it's a very short one. I recited in a chapel, Unitarian chapel, in a small crowd. And they came to me one by one. They say, very appropriate and very good wording, and they appreciate it. Then I thought I can speak on the radio now. Yeah. Do you like it?
I never comment on people's poetry. They get so involved in it, so it's probably best for me to stay stum.
And you know, she's a PhD doctor, and she's a professor, and she's a dean, and she never wrote the poetry, but this poem she has written very well. She writes articles and books. Yeah. Clever girl. I'm very proud of her. This is the eldest daughter. Her name is Payal. Payal.
Well, we don't really do people's names on the programme, but Kpana, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night. How do Keith?
Oh, hello, Alan. Did you happen to watch the Coronation show last Sunday night?
No, I was kind of busy.
Oh, I'm going to lose right away then. No, I wondered what some of the listeners thought about it.
Well, what did you think about it, Keith?
I thought it was the worst show I've ever seen in my life.
Why?
Sheer boredom, you couldn't beat it. And there was one person on, no names, no pack drill. They'd either had a few too many in the afternoon or they were high on drugs. It was terrible.
Right, and in what way terrible? Was it music not to your taste?
The show itself, I mean, where were the comedians?
But when you narrowed it down to one person, no names, no pack drill, you said it was terrible. What was terrible about it?
Well, I'm giving it away then, aren't I? Like the certain person I'm talking about. I mean, I can mention his name to you, but I know you don't like people mentioning him.
I'm just interested in what it was that you found terrible. Was his... Well, we've established it's male. Right, so was he off key?
He were off key, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was terrible, yeah. And the show was, to me, it was crying out for a really good comedian. And we didn't get one. And as for the King and Queen, they looked absolutely bored, and who could blame them? Now, tonight, there were a lady talking about Britain's Got Talent, weren't there? And I agree, they come from other countries and all that, but that was a really good show. It was one of the best I've seen. For talent, for singers and the show.
Right, so Britain's Got Talent was good, are you saying?
Yes, I think it was brilliant. Yeah, I do.
All right, okay. But what do you think of the idea that it's called Britain's Got Talent, but some of them aren't from Britain?
No, they are from other countries, admitted. But that doesn't lessen the show to me. I thought it was really good. The artists that were on, they were really, really good. Yeah.
But so it's called Britain's Got Talent, but we're not showing you any of it because we've got all these foreigners.
Yeah, there's lots of foreigners on. Yeah.
So it's not really Britain's Got Talent, is it? Really, it's Britain's pinched talent.
It doesn't really matter as long as you enjoy it, does it? You know.
Well, that's certainly your position. I was just trying to find out what that position was.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been, judging by last Sunday, Britain's got a load of crap, so we've got these foreigners for you. They should have called it that.
You've been a lot better if they'd have been on, by gum, you love that. I've never been as bored in my life.
All right, well, one of the things you can do when you're bored with television is change the channel and watch something else, you know.
Yeah, but I kept expecting better things, but it never arrived.
No, how long did you hold that expectation?
Oh, I listened to it all, and I think that it got boring and more boring.
But you thought, well, I'll hang on, it may get good yet.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. We never did.
No.
And I just wondered if any of the listeners thought same or what their views were about it, you know.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe they've all worked very, very hard to cross it out of their memories. But you're hanging on to it for some reason, rather like you hung on the night. I've had 3 hours of this. I still think it's going to get good. Have a good night, Keith. 0800 218 2255. You should get a knighthood for resilience. How do Shafiq?
I'm okay, my dear friend Alon. I'd like to talk about the Russia President Putin. In a long time ago, when UN Secretary General Kofi Annan was live, I write to him, Kofi Annan, that every country will get their independence. Now, Putin knew that. Putin believed his soldiers. Putin believed his country people. Putin believed his foreign secretary, who is a famous face in the United Nations, beginning from Kofi Annan. Russia will be also UN member. And recently he met the North Korea Kim Jong-un in the Russia. Yeah, and Kim Jong-un knew about the United Nations. I believe North Korea not in member in United Nations, but I write to Kim Jong-un. What's going on this year, Putin knew that. Putin can't believe Bible as well. Even recently, Ukraine President Zelensky met our Pope Francis. So why Putin fighting? Why taking other country land? When he first taking Crimea, that time I also write to United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Yet what I write to United Nations in the table, Quran in the table, Bible in the table, Jews in the table, Hindu in the table, Sikh in the table, politics.
I'm having trouble. What's that word? Quran in the table? What?
In the table, in the front. What's going on this year? Jesus Christ present.
Shafiq, I'm just trying to find out what it is you're saying. You gave a list of things, all of which were independently in. You said in the Tevil, and I don't know what that is. What do you mean?
Everything in the. Point is one God messenger, Jesus Christ in the present, His life in the present. Why is a war in this year? Why not peace? Why not peace be with you?
I can't, Shafiq, I don't have the answer to why not peace, otherwise I'd share it, but have a good night. How do Peter?
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hi. Many of your listeners will probably want the reintroduction of the death penalty for murder. Will that be about right?
I can't speak for them, I don't know.
I was in a town in the West Midlands about 20 odd years ago, Kings Winford, and I knocked on the door of a man who was in Liverpool in 1964 to help Harry Allen hang Peter Allen. They were no relation, by the way, and he got the shock of his life. And I knocked on the front door and said, I understand you were in Liverpool in, I think it was 13th or 14th of August 1964. I'd have been about 4 at that time. And I said to him, when you take on a job like that, you should expect people to knock on your door and find out who you are. There can be no anonymity regarding people who carry out the death penalty. And he didn't like that. In the end, I was invited into his house and we had quite a long conversation. So basically, the people who... I know you say you can't speak for others, so that's fine. But when you take on a job like that, you should expect a knock on the door at some point during your life. Would that be a fair comment?
It's just a comment. The main executioner in this country was executioner for a good many years, and he ran a pub, and most of the people...
I know he did. Albert Pierpoint.
Yeah, and so he wasn't by any means anonymous, although the traditional way of getting the executioner into prison was to do it surreptitiously, but in those days there were lots of protests, or in the latter stages of the death penalty being used in this country, there were lots of protests outside prisons the night before the execution, and so they used to try and get the executioner, Pierpoint particularly, in and out of the prison without him being accosted, as it were. I don't mean in a physical sense, but accosted in any sense.
Harry Allen actually was accosted outside Durham Prison in 1957 when he conducted the first execution after the passing of the 1957 Homicide Act. In fact, they were still using the guillotine in France up to and including, and it may surprise some of your listeners, up to and including 1977.
But why should a person who is going about his legal practice, even if it's a practice that a number of people disagree with, why should the person who is doing what he or she is required to do under law be challenged for that? Surely those who should be challenged are those that make the laws or retain the laws that require somebody to do what the executioner does. Why should that person be available to the public to be challenged?
Well, when you take on that job, you should expect there's going to be some people out there who will want to basically out you.
But my question wasn't why should they be out? Why should they think they can go about their business silently, like a thief in the night, as it were, or a killer in the night, if you would? My question was different. Why? My question was, why should they have to be available to be approached by the public? Why? They're just doing their job. You may disagree with the job, and many would join you in that, and some would oppose you in that. But they're just doing their job.
Well, why should there be any anonymity then?
Well, it isn't anonymous. You know his name, and the name is readily available. As I say, and you say, Pierpoint was running a pub. He ran two. He ran one in Oldham, and prior to that he ran one in Much Hoole, near Preston. So he wasn't a secret. But again, I say, why should the executioner, even if you disagree with the role that person is performing, why should they be available for public ridicule or support even? Surely the issue goes with the politicians who create the situation or maintain the situation where that person does the job.
No, I think that's a forlorn argument, that one, because...
You may well, but can you counter it?
I can.
Let's hear it then.
On the principle, if you take a job on like that, at some point down the line, there are going to be people out there, me included. I don't like secrets.
Let me try the question again. I'm not asking you whether that person should be doing the job. I'm asking you why, when they take it on, yes, if people find out who they are, they're not going to be pleased about it. I'm asking you, why should they have to endure the public's opprobing? Because not many will be going around to pat them on the back. Why should they endure the public's opprobing when the opprobing is something that they cannot deal with? They can't change the law. They only carry out its requirements.
Isn't that their choice when they take on that appointment?
Their choice is to take on the job. The choice isn't to be accosted in their home. That's a choice made by those doing the accosting.
Well, isn't that a consequence of taking on the job?
It shouldn't be, surely. They should be entitled to go about their lawful business without having to justify themselves to Tom, Dick or Harriet. Shouldn't they?
Well, unfortunately, that didn't occur in the UK. It has occurred elsewhere in the world, and there was two executions in Bermuda in 1977, and I've tried and tried and tried to find out who the hangman was, and all we've got so far he was from Canada, and that's it.
But Peter, what is the relevance? Surely, if you are... I suspect you're against capital punishment. It doesn't matter either way. Whether a person is for or against capital punishment, the executioner is not a party to that discourse. He's just part, or she, I think there's only ever been a male, but the executioner is just part of the process that the law established. Of course he's essential, but so's the bus he went there on. You're not costing the bloody bus driver. Yes, he's an essential part, but he doesn't have any say in whether the law will change. He has no power to change the law. He could say, I'm not doing it anymore, and he could be, I'm not suggesting you did, he could be harassed out of the job, but there's another one waiting. If you want the executions to stop, it's no good harassing the executioner. It's like attacking rope shops, you know? If you want the execution to stop, that's a political thing. Talk to politicians, surely.
Well, in the UK and France, names and addresses were always available.
So it's not secret?
Not in the UK and France, no. Elsewhere, yes, and I can't quite understand why.
Well, fine. But I can't understand why anyone would want to go to the executioner and address them as the executioner. Why would they? If you agree or disagree with the practice, talk to those that can change it, not the schmuck that carries it out.
Well, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. But anyway, many thanks for speaking to me. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Have a good night. 0800 218 2255. If you want to join us, feel free. Peter started off by saying many people listening to this programme would be in favour of execution for murderers. And I certainly know that some are, because they've called in and said so. What's your point of view? The debate about capital punishment's gone quiet, presumably because we were a signatory to treaties that are out of our direct control. But of course, we are out of the European Union, and there's a discourse going on to say that we want to get out of the sort of area of operation of the European Court of Human Rights, which would leave us free as a nation, if we so desired, to reintroduce capital punishment. Now, there are some members of Parliament sitting there thinking, what a cracking idea that would be. They are in a minority presently, but is that something we ought to consider when we once again are free to implement our decision? You tell me. 0800 218 2255. I'll do Eileen.
Hiya. I wanted to mention, I read this about 12, 14 years ago. Basically, it was a place in America, and loads of people kept getting registered at the hospital, very ill and that, and they were taken in. And when they were sorted out in the hospital, getting sorted out, their families had to be told, and they had leprosy. And this was rising and rising in the area. And more people there were they weren't getting really any answers there. And basically they were getting really scared. And it was quite a big place, I think, because a lot of people didn't know about this, but a lot of people were affected by it. And what happened was we started looking where this leprosy was coming from. And someone said it was from this 9-winged armadillo that was in the habitat of the area. They'd looked it up. And so they started going out in these lynch mobs and killing them with probably guns and battering them or whatever. And they kept getting arrested by the police because other people were probably alarmed and they didn't know what was going on. And so they ended up in court. Anyhow, there was no answers. Lots of people knew, lots of people didn't know. And some guy got this story and just thought it was bizarre. He didn't know what was going on. And he went down to this place, and he was a journalist. And he sucked out some people that were involved. And he found out it wasn't just these lunatics going out in a lynch mob. It was these guys and that, and their families had caught leprosy. And so he done a bit of digging as well. And he found not only was this state involved, there were 2 other states in America that were also evolving with leprosy. Now, do you know what? In 1967, we were given the BCG. Do you remember? And I looked up what the BCG was for. It was for tuberculosis, leprosy, and I think the other one was diphtheria. I can't remember the third one properly. And what happened was, I think, in 18th century, that was the last leprosy colony, was in a place called Paddycombe down in Devon in UK, and we eradicated it. But you know what? When you've got leper colonies, you don't get money. You get special stuff called script without the T, or vouchers. And all the businesses that left early in the 60s, I think we ignited with it here in the early 60s. It was kind of pushed down in the 67 with the BCG. And do you know what? I've seen it on people of all different colours and nations. And I'll tell you how. I was looking up to make sure, because I have seen this on pictures. It's not all people with their digits falling off or blind. But what it is there was a programme on about 3 months ago, and the woman went in and she knew she was talking about Henry VIII and syphilis. Now, I'm just going to connect this how it goes. And she said, let's go into all the archives and find the proof or find the not proof and find some documents to say if this is true. And they searched in this programme. I only come in halfway, by the way. They searched all through this.
A bit like your brain only came in halfway. Good night. 0800 218 2255. If you want to join us, you can. Feel free. Just pick up your phone, have your say, and, well, even if it's balmy, I'll do Trevor.
Just as well, people who've got balmy things to say can come on, otherwise I wouldn't be speaking to you, Alan.
Well, quite. I wouldn't have a living.
The gentleman earlier on was talking about staying with the Coronation concert for 3 hours. Hoping it to get better. And I have heard people, not me obviously, I have heard people say, I listen to Allan Beswick for 3 hours every Saturday and Sunday in the hope that it gets better.
40 years later, he's still crap. I'm not altogether sure who we blame.
And secondly, are you flying first class to Canada?
I don't know whether they have first class anymore, do they?
Well, you were talking earlier with the Mexican. Yes, I think they do, don't they, on transatlantic flights?
I thought they had business class.
Oh, well, it might be called that. Yeah. Are you flying an enhanced or kind of economy flight?
I think I'm in charge of going to the end of the wing and making sure that the lights are flashing on and off. I've got to earn my passage.
An outside seat, as it were.
An outside seat, that's it.
Right, I have got a cryptic crossword clue for you. School the horse, it's a crime to do it. 2 letters, 5 and 2.
2 letters, 2 words.
Sorry, 2 words. I'm losing it, aren't I? Really? Well, I always do. 5 and 2. 2 words, 5 and 2.
School the horse. It's a crime to do it.
Yep.
I don't know.
Break in.
Oh, I see. Do they still break horses in? I thought that was a cowboy thing. Anyway, no,
I think they do to an extent. Anyway, I'm probably the only person. No, not the only person. One of few people who looks at red button text news on the telly in the old-fashioned way. And on Eurovision, for a little while, because there are a restricted number of kind of characters they can display. For a while it said Laureen won and Britain came second. Unfortunately, the number of characters didn't allow them to say second from last.
That's probably what happened last year and nobody noticed.
After a little while, I did notice they changed it and rearranged it to say came 25th. But there we are. It amused me. Well, my wildlife story of the week. colonies of ants apparently can play dead to fool predators. And this was a discovery made in Australia on Kangaroo Island, where they opened a nesting box to find ants inside, and so they saw a lot of dead ants. And then one moved slightly, said the professor investigating this, and apparently it's unusual, what they call defensive immobility. But it's unusual. They don't know of any other instance where it's been observed for entire colonies of ants. And the researcher added, we have a relatively unknown world of ants under our feet. Well, I hope from the ants' perspective, they're not exactly under our feet. But anyway, I found
they're not above them, are they? I mean, they are under our feet, but not immediately so.
Yes, I mean, it did occur to me they might get trodden on. But anyway, speaking of ants, what do you call a well-dressed ant?
I don't know.
Elegant.
Elegant. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I was...
what do you call a dead ant?
Go on.
Nothing. What's the point?
You win. I've been interested in this Conservative Democratic organisation, which appears largely to be disenchanted former cabinet ministers and others who would like to see the return of Boris. But I don't know if you heard the former Home Secretary Priti Patel, who was talking about the Labour front bench and described them as Britain-hating, criminal-supporting socialists, and then she went on to say, who want to see Britain forced back into the UK. Apparently she slightly misspoke, as it were.
Yeah, so it would seem.
And finally, Alan, if you let me wander on a little bit longer, I've got three quick whinges about supermarkets, which I've no doubt you will readily shoot down, but, get them off my chest. The first one is two-tier prices. I don't know if you've noticed this, but increasingly on quite a large number of items in supermarkets, there are two prices, one for everyone and one for those who have a loyalty card, or in some cases, you have to have a smartphone because they're only available if you've downloaded their app, as apparently people do these days. And I personally, I know it's a choice I get. Well, I haven't got a smartphone, so I couldn't do an app. But I suppose in those that have a card as well as an app, I could get a card. But it just slightly irritates me that there's that two-tier process.
Fair enough.
Second one is shrinking groceries, which has been happening probably for a very long time, to be fair. But I'm inclined to think it's beginning to get a bit more blatant. So I saw in the supermarket the other day a particular brand of butter, which I won't identify, and it appeared to be very marginally cheaper than it had been a couple of weeks ago. And then I thought, as I picked a packet up, this looks smaller. And ever since metrication, the standard kind of pack of butter has been 250 grams. And this particular one is now 200 grams.
But I don't do a lot of variety of supermarkets. I just go into one, buy what I need and go home. But when you go into supermarkets often, they have the quantity, if you like, the price per litre, the price per pound, the price per gram,
100 grams or whatever.
Yeah. So you get, if you keep check on that, the size of the object is irrelevant. You can see the unit price.
I guess that's right. It's usually an extremely small print, certainly in the supermarkets that I go into, and I just guess that most people don't do that. But I thought a reduction from 250 grams to 200 grams is quite a significant one. So there we are.
20%.
Indeed. And the final thing, yes, quite so. And the final thing was, there's been a lot of talk recently about supermarkets making profits, not passing on reductions to customers and so on. And I did hear a spokesman for a large retail organisation or a representative of retailers saying our sole focus is on the lowest possible prices for our customers. And my response to that was, no, it isn't. It's on continuing to make profits at whatever level we charge.
Yeah, just because a man's a liar doesn't mean you have to believe him.
No, I'm not entirely that credulous, as it were, but it just interested me that they said it with a straight face.
Yeah, well, that's it's not going to come on. We really want to save you money, we do. No, honestly, we do. Oh, stop messing about. Of course we do. It's not really how PR works, Trevor.
Oh, I will.
Daddy 0800 218 2255. How do, Emily?
Hello. First of all, one of those things Trevor said, I'd like to totally agree with him.
Okay.
The loyalty card thing. I was in one of the supermarkets a couple of weeks ago, and because I remember when it just literally used to be a card. And I inquired how because they asked me about the loyalty points, and I said, well, how do I get these things? And they said, oh, well, you download our app. And I don't have a smartphone, I just have a regular phone. But I remember when these things were like a physical card, and I wonder how many, I agree with Trevor, and I don't think we're the only two people who irritated by this way, everybody's going to download the app. What about the people who choose not to have a smartphone?
Well, those people don't get the benefit of having one. And one of the benefits of having one appears to be getting access to lower prices for things.
Yes, but I suppose
that's the choice a person makes.
We could it's therefore slightly discriminatory.
Well, so they are entitled to say, if you do what we want you to do, we'll give you a reward for it.
Yes.
And if you're not prepared to do it, we won't. It's like the gas and the electric.
I'm not going to buy a smartphone.
Well, that's your choice, but we're discussing whether whether it's wrong for them to do it. With the gas people and the electricity people, if you pay by direct debit, you get it a bit cheaper.
Yes, well, I do the direct debits, but I wish they'd go back to, you can have a physical card like they used to, or the app. Then you have like two choices.
Well, indeed, but then that's more expensive for them, and the idea
they're
is
not exactly poor, though, are they?
Well, no, but that's how they're not poor, by getting people to go to their shop. And what they're trying to do is to get each of us, it's not working with you, and it sure as hell ain't going to work with me, to commit to shopping with them by giving us this connection, so that when we go in the shop, they make profit that they wouldn't have otherwise made. Because I might have been in the other supermarket where I don't have such a card or such an app or whatever. It's a marketing exercise, as Trevor said, and you're implying
which has nothing to do with the customer, really.
No, look.
Although they pretend.
Well, of course they do, Emily. Of course they do. They don't put signs up saying, come on in here, we're going to rip you blind, we're going to steal every farthing we can out of your purse because you're a half-brained cretin and we only want your money. That's not marketing. Every business, every single business, there isn't one that doesn't. Every single business wants as much as your money they can get by giving you as little as possible. That's the job. So as long as we accept that, then every ploy that these supermarkets and these power companies and all the rest of it, every ploy they come up with is simply a way of getting you to give them more of your money in return for less. That's their job.
Okay, so now I've got that out of my system. I guess
it'll be back.
Yeah, I just had to get that out of my system. It was either that or, like, smashing something in the room. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's what they'd want you to do, because then you'd have to buy another.
True. It's a win-win for them.
Oh, God, yes.
So the point I called about was the chap who was on about the death penalty.
Yes, well, he was on about executioners, but I suppose they are linked.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Now, there's lots of things I disagree with, But I don't literally hunt down where people live who might have some sort of association with that and go and knock on their door, stalking and harassing them. I mean, that's basically, as you said, if we take, say, Albert Pierpoint, who's the most famous one, and yeah, he did run a pub, and he didn't make the laws. That was his job. So for somebody to then go into his pub and start giving him verbal, it's kind of like shooting the messenger. That bloke who was on before was talking about some, I don't know, was it Barbados, did he say, or was it Bermuda or something?
I think it was Bermuda.
And the executioner, he found out the executioner was Canadian, yeah? I mean, what was he going to do? Because he said, I couldn't find out where this man lived, he was only Canadian. I mean, if he'd have found out, what was he going to do, fly to Canada?
He might
and knock on his front door and say, you executed somebody in, like, 1971 or something. I found that all very alarming. These people have a right to a private life. As I say, I disagree with quite a number of things, but I don't go on Google or whatever and see if I can find out where somebody lives, so then I can go and knock on their front door and get in their face.
But if a person is working on behalf of the government, aren't they, I won't use the expression fair game, because that would leave it open to all sorts of things.
Vigilantism.
Well, yes, quite. But aren't they are a public servant, and we are the public. They are our servant, and should we not be able to discuss with them the role that they perform on our behalf?
Would that include finding their address and going, I mean, example, say there's like some people and they're listening to your show, or they might be listening to somebody else's show, or somebody who presents a TV show, or anybody, yeah? And they didn't like the programme. And they found out where the presenter lived. And they went and they knocked on their front door and started giving them verbal. To me, that is stalking and harassment.
Well, it could be stalking.
Going to the person's home.
A one-off visit doesn't constitute stalking under the stalking rules, but yes, it's not pleasant for the individual concerned. But of course, a radio or television presenter isn't a public servant.
So are we just talking about, because we don't have hangmen anymore, obviously. In that case, it's hangman. I mean, so would politicians be in that group?
Yes, politicians.
We have had two politicians recently assassinated, murdered. There was David Amos, the MP for Southend, who was stabbed to death at one of his constituency meetings.
Yes.
And then there was the lady, Labour MP, who I can't remember her name, but then her sister got the seat.
Well,
do you understand what I'm saying? The danger.
I do understand what you're saying, but if a person puts themselves up as a public servant, then it is within the realms of acceptance for somebody to want to discuss that service with them.
The thing is there, though, that you don't know, because these people aren't serious, you don't know if these people are violent. We've had very few political assassinations.
That is very definitely a true thing. But if you choose to step into the cauldron of being a public servant, then you have to be prepared, it is argued, to have that public come and speak with you.
Why not write them a letter?
Well, that is one of the options. I'm not suggesting that one should go and speak with public servants, but if you are a public servant, a decision maker, I don't mean the guy in the tax office that fills the forms in and sends them out again. I mean the person that makes the decisions, the person that is involved in the process on a very, very substantive level, then one ought to be entitled to question them about it.
Well, I do agree with that, but I kind of draw the line with actively finding their home address and then going and knocking on their I mean, obviously, if you're going to be angry with them, like that chap who's against the death penalty, he was quite angry. He said he was angry, and the bloke who answered the door, the ex-executioner, wasn't happy. And I don't know what happened, but somehow he ended up getting invited in. But I don't know. I just don't think it's well-mannered to go and knock on somebody's door and have a go at them.
It most definitely isn't well-mannered. It is ungracious way to behave, but surely...
I'm wondering whether that chap that called in, I mean, maybe if he called back, I wonder if... Because he mentioned a specific case, didn't he?
He did.
Hangman chap was, I don't know, is it the Cameo murders hanging?
It's irrelevant, really.
I was thinking to myself, does he have some personal...
I don't know.
Thing? Was that a relative that was hanged?
I don't know. It's impossible for me to know that, and of no concern of mine anyway. What matters... I don't think you... Well, I know probably how you would react if somebody who didn't like your presenting knocked on your front door and said, gave you a load of guff. They would get exactly the same treatment as somebody who comes to tell me how wonderful they think it is, and that is the door would close.
You certainly wouldn't invite them in.
I wouldn't know, but that's me.
You see, that hangman chap, I don't know. I think inviting somebody in like that was not a good idea.
That was up to them. It was people make their own choices. If somebody knocks on my door and says, "Hi, I'm your best friend from school," I say, "Bye," and close the door. That's me.
Well, letting somebody in, that you don't actually know, who has some sort of grievance, which is why they're there.
But that's
how people get stabbed.
That isn't how people get stabbed. Listen, there have been two absolutely tragic, diabolically tragic. Airy Neve getting blown to pieces in his car in the car park. We can go through a whole list. But when we start talking about the many thousands and thousands and thousands who don't get stabbed, it kind of balances it out. But the truth is, people are entitled to privacy, but others are entitled to say, "You're doing something on my behalf, and I don't want you to."
Were the executioners who were hanging people based on political legislation? Would you say?
Well, I don't know what you mean by.
Let's say Christie was. I think Pierpoint did Christie. So did Pierpoint hang Christie on the people who were around in 1955 on their behalf, or did he hang Christie because the law said Christie's been sentenced to death, you're the hangman, you have to hang him? By the way, I've got Albert Pierpoint's autobiography, And it's he goes through all the cases he's
Well,
done.
you will, if you have his
He was against the death penalty.
Well, that's a moot point, and we can come to that if you wish. But if you have Albert Pierpoint's autobiography, you will know from reading that he had no say or any interest in saying whether...
Exactly. Have you read it?
So yes, and interviewed him twice about it.
Did you read the passage? Because as we know, he had a pub.
He had 2 pubs, but
and
go
there
on.
was one of his regulars who was a friend of his who was drinking in the pub.
He was
and
a customer.
He was found, he knew him by name. And he was found guilty of murdering his common-law wife, and he was sentenced to death. And, Pierpoint didn't know until he walked in the cell. Because if you see any films about this,
he would know the night before because
he knew the night before.
So
if you
not
see
when he
old
walked into
films, say like Yield to the Night, for instance, the actual execution room was next door, and he only found out the night before. And he considered this man a friend.
No,
and he had to hang him.
He considered him a customer. They used to
that
have...
was the only time he had to hang someone that he knew. But he does... he does write in the sense that this wasn't something he enjoyed. This was his job. And that job, of course, allowed him to buy the pub. And I'm pretty sure at the end he was against it.
Okay, well, there are a number of things in that sentence, and I'll address each of them, because...
I probably have to reread parts of it.
The
biography.
I would read all of it, because it's a very, very worthwhile read.
I have got it, and I last sort of read it about 5 years ago, so maybe I will reread it again. But what was you going to say?
One of the things he says emphatically in the book and in the interviews that surrounded the book, and I interviewed him twice, when it came out in hardback and then again when it came out in softback, he made the point that as far as he was concerned, it was his duty, not only to the state, but also to the sentencee, the person that's going to be hanged. And what he said was, I paraphrase brutally, but what he said was, I'm good at it, and I'm able to do it in a way that the person suffers the least that they could possibly suffer. And one of his boasts is the wrong word, but I can't think of another one. But one of his boasts were they always, in this country, used to hang them at 8 a.m. And he used to say, I used to enter the condemned cell, pinion the arms, take the person to the gallows, and they would be ready and dispatched before the clock finished chiming 8 o'clock.
Yes, I remember that.
So that's that bit. He was dealing with it.
He prided himself on being able to do this thing as fast as possible.
He was dealing with it because he said they are going to be put to death. That isn't my decision. I am going to do it in the most humane way possible, and I am the best at it. That was his position. His position about whether it was right or wrong. There was one question where I addressed to him, and he uses the expression "poor Ruth Ellis." He hanged Ruth Ellis, who you may know was the woman who shot.
The last woman to be hanged, and of course that was a crime of passion.
And he said, "Poor Ruth Ellis," and I asked him why poor Ruth Ellis. It was the only one of his customers that he applied a adjective to. He said poor Ruth Ellis, and he didn't say she shouldn't have hanged, he just said she was in awful circumstances. So that was that. And at the end of the book he didn't say And lots of people say he did, but he didn't actually say, I am against capital punishment. What he said was that capital punishment is supposed to prevent murders. But I've been very, very busy.
I just mentioned Ruth Ellis, that the judge at her trial, Justice Havers, was against her being hanged. And Justice Havers actually wrote a letter to Gwilym Lloyd George, who was the Home Secretary, asking for leniency, and he didn't. And yeah, I mean, my great-grandparents lived in Ilford, and in 1921 there was a horrible murder several streets away. A man and woman called Percy and Edith Thompson lived there, and she had taken up with a younger man called Frederick Bywater. And
we don't really have the time to go through the whole
no,
thing.
they were both. I mean, the controversy there was that she'd written love letters to Bywater. Bywater killed her husband.
Emily, I say again, we don't have the time to go through the actual casework. We just don't.
No, but the situation is her hanging.
And yet you're going to keep doing it, so good night. How do George?
Hello, Alan. I'd like to talk about dogs, Alan. I know your favourite.
Can you tell me what
I disagree with people breeding dogs. I think it's all wrong. I mean, there's a chap down by where I live.
There isn't really another, George. There isn't really another way to get dogs other than by breeding them.
Yeah, but this chap, he breeds them and sells them for about 1,200 quid each. Okay. And he can't get enough bloody dogs to do it. And
so
I think it's all wrong.
Well, what is it you're against? Are you against the breeding of dogs? Are you against people making astronomical amounts of money out of the breeding of dogs?
Yeah, well, yeah, making all this money, and I think it's all wrong. He should have.
So how much should I have a problem. You say you're against the breeding of dogs, and then I point out that it's the only way you get them, and then you tell me this guy's breeding them and getting a lot of money for them. Well, I say more fools the people giving him the money. What is it you're against? Be more specific, if you can.
Well, apart from that, Alan, there's so many people getting attacked by dogs, and I think that's most of the breeding more dogs, and more dogs are taking people's lives.
Well, could it... I mean, so now we're back to the beginning again, because now your argument isn't against this man making 1,000 quid. Your argument is against the very existence of the dog.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand what your position is. If you're against dogs, that's fine. You'd get my support in that view, but others would disagree with you entirely. But you're not saying, are you, that no dogs should be bred?
No, well...
No.
It's just what I think, Alan.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to work out what it is you do think, because you said, I'm against the breeding of dogs. My response was, you can't get them any other way. And then you said, well, there's a bloke down the road making 1,200 quid a dog. So that made me think you were against the breeding of dogs and the person involved getting a lot of money for it. And then when I asked you again, we went back and said, well, a lot of dogs are harming people. And I'm trying to work out where you are on this. Are you against dogs per se, let's ban them? Or are you against dogs being too expensive?
I'm against... I'm just against people breeding dogs. I think it should be banned.
Right. So that would, if you stop people breeding dogs in a fairly reasonable space of time, there would be no dogs.
That's where it's like it.
Well, but I'm trying to get your opinion. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that you will get your way. But if you're against people breeding dogs, if you say people should not be allowed to breed dogs, then in 10 years' time there won't be any. Because that's how we get them. They don't come from factories. Yep. All right, George. Good on you.
That's all right.
All right, have a good night. George is against people breeding dogs. He's also against somebody making 1,200 quid for breeding, for getting the dog. And you got 6, that's, what, $7,000 for 1 litre, which is ludicrous. More fool the idiots that buy them, I say. 0800 218 2255. It's 11:30. We're halfway through. We're here till 1 o'clock. You're more than welcome to join us. Just pick up your phone and have just say, and I'll listen to the Stranglers. I hope you'll join me. I rather like this song. It's about drugs, which is a bit of a downer. There you go. The Stranglers, Golden Brown. Brilliant. We're talking about Albert Pierpoint earlier, well, just a few moments ago, and we got on to Ruth Ellis, and then we got on to Lord Havers. Lord Havers, of course, was a very famous judge, and he had a son called Michael Havers. And Michael Havers became what was his proper title now? The Lord Chief Justice of the United Kingdom. So it's kind of family business. But then Michael Havers had a son called Nigel Havers, who you may know, the actor. There you go. 0800, yeah, I know it's irrelevant. 0800 218 2255. How do June?
Hi, Alan. I just wanted to inject a little bit of difference to what's been said, but I hope that you don't find it boring.
Oh no, we like difference.
Well, when I was about 12, my dad used to have a laundry around. He worked for a laundry. The laundry isn't there, but I can tell you now it was called Denton Road Laundry. And we used to deliver all over Ashton, Reddish, Denton, everywhere, right? And what I was going to say was, you'd be surprised at the people, the diversity of the people that sent stuff to the laundry, from really the dead poor that owed us weeks and weeks and finished up confiscating the laundry, the sheets and what have you, to the really poor, really posh people. But this particular I used to do Saturday mornings with him on holidays, and this particular morning we'd gone, and I can always remember it. I can't tell you where it was because I can't remember, but it was a cul-de-sac, and it was a house at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. It was a lovely house, and we'd been a couple of times, and I delivered the laundry that always was in a box and pristine. I delivered it, and this chap used to give me the old threepenny bit, and I thought it was wonderful, and plus sometimes he'd give me a toffee. And anyway, this particular day we'd gone, and I'd delivered his laundry as usual, and he called me Dad, and he said, come in. He said, would you like to meet me? Now I can't remember whether it was his brother, his cousin, whatever. And he said, would you like to meet Albert Pierpoint? And who it turned out, I didn't know anyway, but somebody had shook hands with him, and they were talking, and we came out and got in the van, and coming back, and my dad said to me, you don't know who that is, do you? So I said, no, obviously I didn't. So he started to tell me who he was and what he did and what have you. Well, I was terrified after that. I refused point blank to take anything to that house again. But it was one of the reasons I was ringing. Is surprising the people that I'm 77 now, and I'd be 12. So I mean we're going back, but you'd be surprised the people that used to send laundry to the laundry. from really poorish people that, you know, had always, I mean, half the time the laundry was only like a shilling, you know, and it was the sheets, and well, it was only ever sheets, and but it had build up, and then we'd refuse to deliver the laundry. You know, it'd go for a couple of times, and then they'd fork out the money eventually, you know, and you deliver back to the really, you know, the ones that thought that they were well above you because you were delivering the laundry. But you used to get a shilling sometimes off them at Christmas. But I'm sorry if it's boring. It's just
no, it's not.
I wanted.
It's fascinating in lots of ways. I mean, meeting Albert Pierpoint, but also one of the things I used to be told by like milkmen and newspapers and people like that, when in the days when all these things were delivered, they used to say the people in the sort of private estates rather than the council estates were the worst payers.
Absolutely.
You're saying the same thing.
and then they'd turn round and say, because they used to send shirts, and the shirts were immaculate when they went out, and they were pinned, you know, so that the sleeves were in a certain way, and the collars, and they were absolutely immaculate, and they'd complain because there weren't enough pins in it. You know, they'd say, you know, well, when you delivered last week, there was only 6 pins in, and there should be 12. I can remember that, and it was those sort of people. I mean, some were absolutely wonderful, but mostly it was. But the thing about it is, in those days, people didn't have, well, most people didn't have a washer. So what were they to do?
They certainly didn't have a tumble dryer. It was over the wooden horse by the fire, wasn't it?
Well, but I would to the washer that, you know, if they didn't have, like my grandma, a set boiler that we were always terrified of blow up. But if they didn't have something like that, you know, because the really poor people, they didn't even have that.
No.
Now I think back, it opened my eyes, and it just surprised. But I go past a lot of places that I used to deliver laundry to and smile and think, oh, you didn't pay properly. You know, nets and no knickers.
Fur coat and no knickers, that was the one, wasn't it?
That's true.
Hey.
That's true. Anyway, I'm sorry if I've...
No, it's all right.
I just wanted to inject a bit of a lighter note too.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, my parents lived in a council. Well, I did as well. You know, I lived with them.
So did I.
We lived in a council house, and it was a new build not long after the war. But I was born in 1948, so just before that, they weren't there. They were living in a flat, and so about 1945, 1946, these were built just after the war, and they had a wash house. Every one of them had a wash house, and in a wash house there was a gas boiler. So they had a big boiler, and you know, the housewife, it was always the housewife, would pile it all in, because everything was cotton in those days or whatever, and then there'd be a gas, sort of like your gas cooker, but a gas ring under the boiler, and they'd light it.
That's what they call a set boiler.
Yeah, a set boiler, that was it. That's exactly it. And they used to throw in the Purcell and the washing and all that caper. And, you know, eventually, of course, they got washing machines, and that was all taken out. And we always used to store us bikes there and God knows what else. And shut the dog in there when it was being in trouble.
Well, thank God for... Go on.
Well, on one occasion, shut the little ginger boy there for being even more trouble. But that's another story.
No, well, when I was born, we actually lived next door to this laundry. The house was joining, and my dad used to go in every morning and light the fires under the big boilers. So we always had hot water where I lived, but hot water in an outside loo. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to me, Alan. I think your programme's wonderful.
Well, we were really posh. We had hot water and an inside loo.
Oh, you were posh.
I know.
You want to look twice at me.
Good on you, June. Good to talk to you. 0800 218 2255. That's an old expression, isn't it? Wouldn't have looked twice at me. A fabulous one. 0800 218 2255. If you want to join us, that's good. Pick up your phone, have your say, talk about, well, frankly, as you may have gathered just by listening, absolutely anything. We really don't mind. We are, I say this a lot, I'm not even sure I know what it means, but we are a broad church, and we also have some fairly broad accents from time to time. But 0800 218 got the hiccup, 2255. Quick shufty at Monday's newspapers, if you're that way inclined. The Daily Telegraph kicks off with Braverman pushes PM to deliver on migrants. Everybody perhaps wishes the Prime Minister luck with that. Not many think he'll be able to achieve his objective. NHS consultants' 35% pay rise plea rejected. Most teenagers are aware of friends who want to swap gender. So most teenagers these days, according to the Telegraph, have friends who believe they are a different gender than the one they are living, or want to be a different gender than the one they're living. Inspirational Kevin Sinfield carries Rob Burrows over the line after a marathon. That's the front page of the Daily Mirror. Brothers in arms. And the Times, Britons will forget how to work, says Braverman. Well, I never found out. Erdogan on the brink as both sides dispute the Turkish voting. And London to Sydney in 2 hours. 2 hours via space. Maybe not. Furious Phil calls in lawyers. This is referring to a television presenter you may or may not have heard of called Philip Schofield. And he's bringing in the lawyers. He's talking about taking back control in the feud with his television partner, Holly, whatever her name is. Very strange. Starmer to use the EU citizens to rig the polls, says the Daily Mail. Oh dear. And the BAFTA double act for Mama and Mia. Some are on hold. That's the Daily Star. And the Daily Express, outrage over Labour's plan to reopen Brexit. Quite a lot of people. Remember, it wasn't an overwhelming victory. It was a victory for the Brexiteers. The Remainers lost. They got a kick in. It was, 6 percentage points above them. 47 against 53, something like that. But I get a sense talking to people that some are thinking maybe we didn't get it right. Lots are saying the government hasn't got it right since, but some people are saying actually maybe we should never have left. I don't know. Sunak under pressure to get tougher on migrants, says the I. And the Guardian, Braverman rejects Tory calls to ease visa rules, and both sides claim the edge in the high stakes Turkish poll. That's going to end up fighting, one hopes not. An NHS privacy fear after a doctor shares records. Oh dear. 0800 218 2255. If you want to join us, that's good. And on that note about Brexit, it was, I know 6 points is a lot. You can form a government with that. It wasn't about electing a government, but 6 points, 6 percentage points is an awful lot. Have you changed your mind on Brexit? Either you were a Brexiteer and think, well, we made a pig's ear of that, let's go back. Or indeed you were a Remainer and say, thank God we're out. You tell me. 0800 218 2255. How do Sam?
Hi, Alan. Can I read a paragraph? Can I read a paragraph I was researching?
What? Well, you were researching. Who wrote it? What is it?
Oh, well, I was researching like natural selection and evolution, and then I don't know why. I typed something else. I typed did humans wipe before toilet paper?
Whose paragraph is it? Whose words are you going to recite?
Oh, you just talk of stop. Did humans?
No. I want to know whose it is. I don't care what it says yet. Whose is it?
It's I don't know.
Right. Well, no, you can't then, because I have no way of knowing.
Can I reword it?
you can give me your view without reading it from that, because we don't have the copyright to do that. It's whoever wrote it, it belongs to them. And you
So
can't
before,
just...
sorry, go on.
So paraphrase it and give me what it says, rather than read it.
hmm So before toilet paper existed, humans, when they used to go to the toilet, they used to use leaves, sticks, moose, sand, water. These were the common. So they used to use this. That's what they used to use to wipe their after toilet.
Yeah, we got that worked out. So that's what they used to use. Carry on.
Yeah, it's. That's what they used to use. That's what they used to use, basically, depending where they lived.
Well, we knew that. We knew for sure that they weren't using soft tissue back in the Stone Ages. So we kind of figured that if they were going to wipe at all, that's what they'd use. I mean, you know.
But I mean, I don't understand what sand. I don't know, because I've got a cat. My cat licked itself. Well, I don't understand. Why didn't they just go into the river? Why use sand? Like with sand.
Well, they might not be. They might not be. If you're in the desert, it's not full of rivers. It's full of sand, mind.
Yeah, but there's no mention of river.
Well, you just mentioned river. You said, why don't they go in the rivers?
Yeah, I would just dip myself into the river back then.
Well, you would if there was a river, but you wouldn't. If you're in the middle of Sahara, you'd have a really crappy bum by the time you found a river.
Yeah.
People would sing after you, hey, crappy bum bum. What?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. You use what is available.
Yeah. So we share a common ancestor with apes, chimpanzees, and monkeys. We're not actually.
Well, we don't share a common ancestor. When you say we share a common ancestor, you go back as far as you like. In truth, we are all chimpanzees, snakes, lizards, and sand. And you and I are basically just the assimilation of atoms from outer space. So how far are you going back?
Well, I think. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But how do monkeys wipe their ass? I mean,
I don't know that they do. I don't suppose they're that bothered.
No. So we were smart. So even then we were smarter because we were using sand and.
Perhaps we weren't smarter. Perhaps the smartest thing was to come to terms with the fact that your bum works all right on its own. You don't really need all this involvement. I remember, it's possibly before your time, I don't know, but back in the late 50s, when people would have a bath, if they were flash, they would have a bath once a week. And so people, back in the late 50s, they actually smelt, believe it or not, you'll find this difficult to comprehend, I'm sure, they smelt like people. They didn't smell like some chemical produced in a factory that's just spent 5 years being squirted into the eyes of a rabbit. They smelt like people. And then a firm that made soap decided we ought to sell a lot more soap. So they had a series of advertisements in the early days of black and white ITV. They had advertisements advertising soap. And to make us want to buy soap, they created the shame of the smell of our bodies. And they used to say, B-O. So two people would be stood chatting to each other on a train, and somebody else would get on the train and stand next to them, and they hadn't used this particular soap. And one of the soap users would look at the other, and say, B-O. In other words, they're whispering that the bloke I'm stood next to stinks. What does he stink of? He stinks of human being, which we were all happy with for millennia. But suddenly we all had to start smelling like a bar of soap. And now God alone knows what we have to smell of. But I know they used to spray it in rabbits' eyes to make sure it was okay for us. And all they've done is shame us into thinking that human beings stink bad. They don't. They smell of humanity. I mean, dogs like each other so much. First thing you do when you meet a dog, smell its arse. So, I don't know what all the fuss is about, Sam. So keep rubbing the sand on, you'll be fine. How do Sheila?
Hello, Alan. That's not what I was going to talk about, but...
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
But whilst you're on the subject, yeah, I think this change is absolutely diabolical. But in terms of smelling, I've suddenly noticed that people who come to my house, like gardeners and supermarket delivery men, seem to be drowning themselves in aftershave.
Yeah.
And
It's horrible. It's horrible.
I don't know whether it's part of the job description or not, in case they get a bit sweaty. But anyway, that's not what I called about. I'm trying to understand the logic of giving people from EU countries the vote, but presumably not residents from non-EU countries.
Well, I slowly catch the monkey, to sort of refer back. But the idea isn't that they just give people the vote. They have to have been here, living here. In other words, they're not just here visiting. They have to be living here and paying taxes. So the idea is to give EU people the vote in this country if they've chosen to live here and if they pay taxes.
But why EU countries?
I think it's possibly a residue of Brexit, and they're trying to reduce the number of EU people, of which there are still many tens of thousands living here, buggering off home. And if they do bugger off home, our services will be in a more parlous state than they are currently through lack of staff.
Oh, because there were some promises made about EU citizens resident in the UK, weren't they? But
and the converse, yes. I mean, Brits living abroad were given certain guarantees by living in the European Union, were given certain guarantees, and I think it's something to do with the reciprocation of that. But there is a fear that EU people may well think, well, why are we staying here? They don't want us here. They proved that when they voted to chuck us out and keep us out. They won't let my friend come and work here like I did all those years ago, and they won't even let me have a vote, so I might as well bugger off home. And they go home, and we've lost another person willing to do a job for us. And the other thing is, of course, and I don't want to dwell too long on this, but most of the people from EU countries have got more or less white faces.
Yeah, but are you saying we haven't got enough people to do jobs?
I am saying exactly that, yes.
I'm not sure.
Well, I can offer you some statistics if you're interested. The National Health Service is 100,000 people short of the numbers it needs. Public transport is in dire straits because it hasn't got the people it needs. Just about every industry you talk to, and the people who run industries, are saying the problem in this country is we can't get staff. There's a pizza house near where I live, and they used to be open 7 evenings a week, and now they're open 2. Not because they're sick of having all that money, but because they can't get anyone to work there. If you walk through any town, if you walk past a pub or a restaurant or a cafe, there's a sign outside saying staff wanted. They're probably all lying, Sheila.
Well, that's because they don't pay enough.
Well, that may be so. But the reality is that what they don't want is people leaving and going home if they're from foreign lands.
The more people we have, the more jobs we need. Therefore, the more people we need.
So are you saying it's a storm in a teacup, and the National Health Service is fine? They don't need that 100,000 more people?
No, I'm saying they do need those people.
Okay,
but
so how will they get them?
No, I'm not saying somebody working at Pizza Hut could go and do an operation in a general hospital. But I can't say it ever worried me that the hospitality industry was reducing in size, because I think the people in the hospitality industry could be doing something more useful.
Well, perhaps they should and could, but one is forced to wonder, why don't they then? And when you say the hospitality industry, what precisely do you mean?
Well, I mean, we've heard a lot about pubs closing, restaurants closing. You know, I don't. We've never been able to revalue the things that we actually need, and to encourage and train people for the things that we really need. And the one thing the pandemic did was to remind us who are the people we need and who are the people that we can get along without.
Well, one of the things we definitely need is more doctors, and they're on strike, more nurses, and they're on strike, more train drivers, and they're on strike. So maybe you're right, maybe they should pay them more. All you and me need to do now is agree that and then pay more taxes. What do you think?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, tell the next 3 governments, because I don't think they believe a word of it. Good on you, Sheila. Lovely to hear from you. Sheila was talking about this plan to give people who are resident in the UK and paying taxes that are EU citizens other than UK people, none of whom are, of course, EU citizens anymore, but giving them the right to vote. They're paying taxes here, they should have the vote here. But it is confined to EU citizens that are here and currently choosing not to go home. Now, whether that will apply to all other people, Americans living and working here and paying taxes, Canadians, Canada's on my mind at the minute because I'm going there for next month, but them being here and having the right to vote, maybe people from other lands too, some of the Aussies, as long as not them dentists that ripped everybody off in, where was it now? It was called, there used to be hundreds of Antipodean dentists doing the world tour, you know, the grand tour that kids do, and they would come here and they got paid per filling. So someone would go in and say, I got a bit of a toothache, doc, and he'd say, that's all right, mate, we'll do them all. And he'd do your whole mouth, send a bill in for 300 quid and have a good time. It is alleged. I never met any one of them, to be honest. It was all court. Why would I go there? There's dentists round here. Or at least there used to be. 0800 218 2255. George Harrison has got his mind set on you. I don't know whether that pleases you or not. It's not my position. Midnight, we're here till 1 o'clock. If you want to join it, well, I say just after. It's just after 5 past midnight, truth be told. But we're here till 1 o'clock anyway, and we're back next weekend, of course, Saturday and Sunday, and thus it will continue right through until the very latest, the very earliest, my apologies, will be the end of August. So this programme will continue until the end of August. For most of June, I won't be here. There'll be somebody sat in the chair doing this programme in my stead, because I'll be gallivanting around Canada whilst somebody comes along and wrecks our bedroom and builds new wardrobes and all sorts of other things, and I don't want to hear all that sawing and banging, so I'm getting the hell out of it. Let somebody else worry about that. Anyway, so we're here, the programme is here at least until at the very, very soonest the end of August, and who knows after that. Certainly not me, and nobody else either. Anyway, so now you know that, but we're here till 1 o'clock today, any road. See how I said today, because that gets me out that difficulty of passing midnight. Anyway, 0800 218 2255. How do Mark?
Good morning, yeah.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. You know what? That song you just played was fantastic, George
It's not
Harrison.
bad. Good bit of drumming in it.
Yeah, was that Ringo?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, it was a great track, that. I remember. I actually bought that song when it came out.
Good Lord.
That's going back some time, isn't it? Anyway, Alan, I wanted to talk about your favourite TV theme tune of all time. If you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
Blimey. I don't know. I really don't know.
It could be from the 60s. It can be from any day.
Well, yeah, but
whatsoever.
that's the trouble. It's so big, isn't it? It's such a massive.
Yeah, but surely
thing
there's
to
one.
countenance.
Surely, Alan. There's
Well,
one
I can't think of one.
I'm sure there's one.
Well, I'm sure you are.
Well, there is with me anyway. There is with me.
Right.
And guess
Well, what's
what
yours
mine
then?
is?
Tell us yours, and that'll help us.
Right.
Get
Mine
past it.
is by one of your brothers of Warrington, and it's a composer named Edwin Astley. Have you heard of him? He's a
I'm not
Warrington
sure.
lad.
Well,
He's from Warrington. He
Well,
was from
lots of
Warrington.
people are. There's about 80,000 of us at any given moment. So, yeah. Go on. And what's the tune?
And it was the tune to Randall and Hopkirk Deceased.
Well, that's going
Remember
back a
that,
bit.
yeah?
I do remember it. Well, it was,
of
redone,
course,
wasn't it?
but I go back.
It was
Yeah, but
redone
it did.
with Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, wasn't it?
Oh, that was rubbish. No,
Okay.
no.
So you mean the
I
original?
like the one with Kenneth Cope and Mike Pratt.
Right.
It was actually, Jeff was Mike Pratt. And that's the one I love. And the tune to that, it was, it's just...
I must
it's
admit.
exquisite. It's hauntingly beautiful.
I remember the series, but regrettably, I don't remember the signature tune. So I suspect
He
it
used to say, Jeff, it's Marty, can you hear me? Jeff. You know, he was a ghost, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, but that wasn't. But that wasn't the signature tune. Somebody saying Jeff. I don't think that'd have caught on, do you?
No, but that's what they used to do. But anyway, that tune was out, and he also did, believe it or not, Roger Moore, the Saint. He did compose that one. He did.
Did you do that riff? What was it?
Yeah, he did that. And this is a Warrington lad, Alan.
Well, they're not all stupid, you know. You can't base them on me.
So you should be proud of him, Edwin.
Why? Why would I be proud of somebody being born in Warrington?
He's a Warrington brother, isn't he?
He's not a brother. I've only got one brother.
I know, but I mean, I don't mean literally. I mean, he came from your territory. That's what I mean.
Well, so
you should be proud.
Why?
Well, I would be. I'm proud that Peter Kay comes from where I come from and stuff.
Why it's no do with you?
Well, it's just us. It's I don't know. I'd be very proud that Edwin Astley came from here.
Why? I don't get it. It has no effect on you at all, and you have no effect on it. That's weird.
No, but it's nice to know that you've got someone there that composed all these tunes.
But where he was born isn't relevant. It's perfectly sensible to say, oh, that's a nice tune, or not a nice tune, or what have you. But it's not enhanced or indeed diminished by where the person was born.
No, but you wouldn't have thought, would you, that he came from Warrington of all places?
Well, statistically, I wouldn't have given it a moment's thought, because the chances are millions and millions to one against me knowing that, unless somebody tells me. But I don't think him coming from Warrington. I don't think. Oh, if you listen carefully, you can just hear the Warringtonness in it. What?
Yeah. No, but I think he was brilliant, and that Randall and Hopkirk tune, Alan. He did Department S, the Baron. You remember the Baron? Was that Gene Barry, the Baron?
I remember the title, but more than that I haven't got, I'm afraid. No.
He did Department S with Peter Wingard, who was Jason King in one. These were all Monty Berman productions, weren't they? If you remember, Monty Berman.
I don't know who.
Monty Berman. He produced them. He
I don't know.
In charge.
My auntie had a dog called Monty, if that's any good.
Sorry, called what? Monty.
Monty, yeah.
After Montgomery, was it?
I didn't ask. It was a dog. It was difficult to have a conversation with.
But I'd be interested to know, like, surely you've lived longer than me even. There's got to be one TV theme that you like, is your favourite.
Well,
there's got to be one, Alan.
Well, you pick it for me then, because I can't think of one.
Well, I don't know, Alan.
Well, that's two of us then. Neither of us know.
What about what was it called? That one?
I don't know.
Where he was got. Vandervolt. What was it called? That was a good tune.
They redid Vandervolt recently, but instead of it being played on possibly a whistle or a piccolo or something of that ilk, it was rather more orchestrated, and it wasn't as good, in my view.
Yeah, but the actual TV theme was really good, wasn't it? On that.
Well, it was a good melody, yeah. But as I say,
Yeah.
I preferred the original version, which was done with different instruments than the lead instrument was more whistly than the later version, and the revamped version of Vandervout just recently. And as I say, that was more orchestral and not as clean, not as definitive.
Yeah. Do you remember the Sweeney as well? That tune as well, the Sweeney. That was more.
I think it did. Did it go?
John Thorne, Dennis Walker.
Yeah, I know who was in it.
Yeah,
but
I love the tune to that. I can play that on guitar. I worked that one out. This is what I do. I can do Ramble and Hopkirk. I can do the Sweeney. And when I hear a tune that I really like, I try and work it out on the guitar just by ear. Because I can't read a note. Yeah, it's just by ear. I can't read music like my father could. I never learned how to read music. Neither did John Lennon, Paul McCartney, or Jimi Hendrix. They couldn't read music.
No, it didn't.
But they
seem
still
to hold
make
them
great
back, did it?
music. No, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to be. You don't have to learn how to read music to play it. That's the thing. You know, it's a misconception among people. A lot of people, they think you've got to be able to read music to play it, but you don't. I'll bet you most of the bands who are working today can't read a note of music.
I don't know how we'd settle that bet, so I won't take it on.
Well, my guess would be that most people cannot read music in the music industry.
Well, that's fine. That's your guess. I'm not going to challenge it. I've got nothing to use to challenge it.
Well, I'm talking about the rock bands and so on. When they're doing these intricate guitar solos, they wouldn't have a clue if they had to write that down in music form.
I mean, that must be true of some, and there'll be others who are aficionados who've got music degrees. I mean, Elton John was in a rock band, and he's fully able to write and note music.
Yeah, but he doesn't write the songs, does he? He doesn't
write. He doesn't write the words.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we're not talking about words. We're talking about music. And
he does the music. Yes.
Indeed,
he composes the tune.
And he's fully trained in music.
So Reginald Dwight can actually write music. Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't think that someone like Ozzy Osbourne could write music. I don't think he'd have a clue. You know?
Well, that's a presumption. I can't say yay or nay, but I'm not going to make a presumption.
No, but I can because I don't work for the BBC. So my guess is he can't read it.
Just because you don't work here doesn't mean you can say anything you feel like saying.
Oh, sorry, Alan.
I mean, in actual fact, he might be listening right now thinking the lying dog, and then he'll sue the BBC for libeling him and saying he can't write or read music. It's all right you saying you don't think it'll happen, but that won't stand very well in court when I'm saying well, I didn't know, and he said he didn't know, but we didn't know. None of us knew. And the judge will say, well, you should have kept your bloody mouth shut then.
Yeah, but come on, this is surely it's free speech in this country, isn't it?
No, there's no such thing as free speech. Where have you got that stupid idea from?
Well, that's what I've heard. That it's free speech we're allowed to say.
It's a bit like your guesses at music. Don't be too. If there's such a thing as free speech in this country, how come people end up in court for what they've said?
Well, then, therefore, it's not free speech, is it?
I just said that, and you said it was. It isn't free speech.
Well, I think most people are under that presumption that it is.
That's fine. Well, they need to wake up. It isn't free. There are limits on what you can do.
Yeah, obviously,
we don't live in a free country. We live in an elected democracy. That's where we live.
That's it.
And so we have to do what the law requires us to do, and we have to not do what the law forbids us from doing. It's not a free country. You can't suddenly go out tonight and think, I'm going to go down the wrong side of the motorway because it's free. I'm going to drive at 145 mile an hour down the wrong side of the motorway. You're not free to do that. You're just not free to do that.
I didn't mean it in that context. I didn't mean that.
Free is free, and limited is not free.
Yeah. No, but surely I'm allowed to say I don't think that...
No, you're not. No, you're not. We've gone through that.
Right. Sorry about that, huh?
Don't be sorry. Don't do it. So where are we up to now?
To me, I'm not offending him because...
You don't know whether you're offending him. He decides whether he's offended or not. He might be really peed off at what you've just said. He might be sitting there thinking, I am wounded. I am wounded to my core. This lying dog is on the radio and getting away with spreading such vile filth about me. That might be what he said. I have no idea. There again, he might be thinking, who the hell's Mark? He can't even read music. What an intellectual jerk. I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe.
Neither of you.
I didn't mean it in a bad way.
It don't matter. Shall we move on rather than go over what you've done? You're just compounding the felony. So get back to your bloody signature tunes, for crying out loud. You were fairly safe there.
But that's what I was talking about originally.
I know that.
Edwin Astley.
Fine.
You know, a Warrington lad that can...
Oh, for God's sake, shut up about where he's from. Edwin Astley wrote tunes. Fine.
Okay. All right.
I don't care. Edwin Astley, right? He wrote some tunes that you think are all right.
Rattle and Hopkirk, the full version of that is the composition of the full version, not the TV one. They used to play a little.
Hang on. I thought we were talking about TV themes.
TV themes.
You can't say the full version. Hang on. We need to establish what it is we're talking about here. Are we talking about television themes? Because if we are, then saying the full one, not the television theme, makes no contribution to the conversation about television themes.
Sorry, did I say the film one? I meant the TV one. Yes. Sorry.
Well, you may well have meant it, but you said not the TV one, which, like an idiot, I believed. Yeah. Anyway, should we get back to where we belong and just you say what you want, and then I don't have to pay any bloody heed to it?
Sorry, Alan, if I'm boring.
Don't be sorry. It's not you boring me. You're just twisting me about like an idiot. You say one thing, then you say another, then you say the opposite, then you say the other, then you tell me where everybody's born, then you tell me this museum's crap and he can't read music. I don't care. Just say what you come on to say, for God's sake.
Right. I just wanted to say that my favourite TV theme tune is Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, with Mike Pratt, the actor, and Kenneth Cope, who's now 92, God bless him.
And an actor.
It should be the other way around these days, because he died at 45, the one who played Jeff. You know, the private detective.
I don't think you die at a particular time in respect of the roles you played in a television show.
But
here's Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, and right now I'm wishing I was dead. Here it is. This apparently, according to Mark, Who Can't Read Music is the best signature tune of a television programme ever. So clearly he's easily pleased. Right, that's enough of that. Shall we have a bit? We'll have a bit of the Sweeney.
Who are you?
I'm all right. Oh, I thought you said how are you? And then the Saint. There. So Mark's now as happy as a pig in muck. How do Stephen?
Good evening, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm doing awfully well, thank you.
Yeah, iconic, iconic signature tunes. Yeah,
It would seem, yeah.
Yeah, typical 70s, yeah. But, yeah, what I was going to talk about, Alan, was we were talking about, was it Brexit? And I mentioned a little bit about electoral roll as well.
Okay. You may.
Yeah, back in 2014, me and my partner, we went to Ireland, and we were part of EU, and the way me and my partner was treated, and she gave birth over in Ireland, I loved it, you know, and we were part of the EU system, you know, as it was then. And of course, David Cameron comes along and he throws the gauntlet down to cast his aspersions about the vote for Brexit. I didn't vote to leave, for obvious reasons, but I do think, and the way it is and the way things have developed over a few years, I think it probably was a mistake. That's my opinion.
Okay.
That we left.
On what basis?
There was a happy media, I thought, or there appeared to be, especially when I was living in Ireland. Southern Ireland. People were nice and friendly. And you felt part of the EU, you know. And it was like a passport to Europe, in a sense, you know. And
it's precisely what it was, yes. But
and it was great. I thought it was great. And, you know, for young people and one thing and another, I mean, I know a lot of youngsters in Ireland have come over here to universities and have developed and moved over to Europe and build up careers, you know, which is, I think, is a great thing.
But the relationship between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, that relationship was solid before the EU was created. So the ability to go to Ireland and live a free life, and the converse, Irish people coming here, that sort of two-way passage has been permissible for donkey's years, but with or without Brexit.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, Alan. But I do think that if we just stayed in Europe, I don't know about the economic scale as we're in now, but whether any bearing influences where UK is now, there's a possibility that could be an influence where our economy's sort of dipped a bit, you know, a lot. But I think if we'd have been part of the EU still, I don't think we'd be in this sort of predicament now. That's my theory, Alan. But I could be wrong, you know.
Listen, you can be the best economist on the planet, and as we found with the Bank of England, all their predictions seem to be wrong. So, quite frankly, I don't think you need to worry about whether you're right or wrong. You're entitled to your view, Stephen.
Well, there were the lovely days when, you know, if you did have a bank account and you could, you know, you could gain some sort of interest to your money that you put into the banks. It gave you some sort of an incentive. Times have changed radically, obviously, haven't they, Alan? And everything's going plastic. But I think the world's gone a little bit close. Well, I'll say England's gone a little bit. I don't know. It must be me. It must be behind times. I was born in the 50s. So I'm from the old school. I think you are as well, aren't you, Alan?
And before that, regrettably, I was born in 1948. But yes,
1955.
It used to be the case that one operated a bank account and you only had to pay any money if you went overdrawn. But that meant that the bank wasn't making money out of you when you merely ran your account. and they weren't keen on that, so they reintroduced charges. Prior to that, of course, prior to the free banking, as it was called, they used to take your money off you, and occasionally they would give you a little bit of interest, even on your current account. And now there are current accounts where you can get a little bit of interest, but not much.
Well, going back to Ireland, I mean, go back to 2014. We had, if I'm allowed to say it on air, but yeah, we absconded, if you might say. We ran away from England. We jumped on a boat from Wales, Holyhead to Dublin, and we started a new life. Because obviously, with my partner having a baby, she was heavily pregnant at the time. They looked after us over there. They really did. And the thing was, we've got a little boy over there now who resides there, and he's being well and truly looked after. He goes over every 3 months. What I have noticed, though, Alan, is that you have to have your passport now or your driving license, proof who you are. So I can understand that. But at that particular time, you didn't need that, because we were part of the EU. We were accepted.
That's right. Well, what they're concerned about now is if you go to Ireland without your passport and you then travel from Ireland to the European Union, because you're on an island flight, you're coming from within the EU. But of course, you've first of all gone into the EU. So yes, they're a little more... they desire to control you a little more presently.
They do, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you go to Ireland, we had that about the last time we went there, and my partner, another chap that was with us, he forgot the driving licence, and the Garda police there. There's 2 controls now in Dublin. You go through your customs, and obviously you go through to your main destination point where you go through customs, and you have to show your ID. Unfortunately, one of our party forgot there, and he said, I could send you back, you're back going home. He said, but on this occasion only, we'll let you through. But make sure next time when you come through, you have all your ID and everything. I was going to say, fair enough. You were good about it, a lot of respect for Ireland, because they looked after us, and we work with them, they work with us, which is great, and I love it. But the thing is, can I mention something about electoral roll, Alan?
Yes.
There's a friend of mine, he came to me last week and he said to me, hey Steve, can you help us out here? I said, what? He said, I didn't decide to go on the electoral roll. I said, no. I said, you do know you have to go on that by law or they can impose a fine on you. He said, yeah, I know. He said, but the way I feel now, he said, I've worked here, paid me taxes, I've got my own property, and I decided to opt out. And with doing so, he said, I got a card through. Didn't get it. He said that no longer anybody's registered this address, so we take it that this property is empty. Bear in mind he owns the property, and they haven't sent him any tax bills, for council tax. So I said to him, mate, I said, what are you going to do about that? And he said, well, what do I do? I said, well, I don't know. I said, but if they haven't sent you a tax bill, then you're not legally bound to pay for something that you haven't got, or you haven't got a receipt to pay for. So technically, they couldn't take you to court.
Oh God!
And I said, well, I said, well, they'll come at you eventually, because if you're not paying any council tax, which you have to pay, I said, what are you going to do? I said, you must chase that, because he said, but Steve, I lived and worked here all my life. I said, I know, and so have I. But you're part of the system. Recognition that you're a British citizen. And he opted out. But as a consequence, he's going through lots of problems at the moment. And I said, well, I wouldn't renege the idea that the fact that, you don't pay any council tax, it will come eventually at you. And they'll probably whack a wacky bill on you. And if you don't pay it, obviously, you said, well, I do. I paid it for many years. I said, I know, but they will take you to court. And they'll also take you for the fact that you haven't gone on the electoral roll, which is I think it's about £1,000 fine,
Well, I don't think it's that much, and it's not the thing that they spend most time on. But if he doesn't pay his council tax, the obligation is on him to pay it. The obligation is not on the council to come and take it from him. So, non-payment of council tax Let me finish, because
do you think, though, Alan, if he doesn't get a bill,
it's important. This is important. Non-payment of council tax, whether you got a bill or not, is a criminal offence.
So the advice would be for him to pursue the head office and say, listen, you know, I'm willing to pay council tax, but obviously because he's not living there, he lives there, obviously, he's residing there. That's done for the last 25 years, you know. But the point of fact is, I said that, he said, why have they gone so? I said, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. I haven't got an answer. But I think it's up to you now. It's your responsibility to chase that. And, you know, if you have to pay, then pay what you pay normally, you know, each year. But he said, I thought it was a bit harsh, you know, that they sent me a card that I'm no longer here. I'm no longer a resident. And as far as he's concerned, he doesn't think he's a British citizen anymore.
Well, he's wrong.
And I said, I said, but you are. You are a British citizen. You know, you paved your way. You've done what you had to do. And, you know, he said, I said, you had a slap in the face.
Listen,
it's
you can be...
now.
If you're born in this country, and then to all intents and purposes, you are a British citizen. Whatever you do after that doesn't change that one iota. You are a British citizen. The government has the power, rarely used, the government has the power to refuse your citizenship, but even then they can only do it if you, under international law, if you are able to have citizenship elsewhere. So they can't make you a stateless person, but they can say you've got dual citizenship. Oh, that's unfortunate. You've got dual citizenship. We are rescinding your British citizenship, but you have to have another one for that to happen. They can't just say you're not having it anymore.
I understand, Alan. I said to him, I said, got yourself in that predicament. I said, why did you suddenly opt out? He said, it's a state of the country, he said, and the government. I said, I know, but when you're on an electoral, you know, you don't have to vote. You know, you're not forced to vote, but you're on the electoral roll, you know, and you've rebellised the idea that, you know, to show your rebellion, you refuse to do the electoral form, you know. He said, well, I've done exactly what, and I said, well, you know, that's up to you, my friend, you know, but you may have to pay the consequences if they pursue. You know, and what do you think of the state of the country, though, Al? What's your personal point?
I don't really have one. It is what it is. No. We live in it.
Yeah, certainly. You have to take it on the chin, don't we, Alan?
Well, we live
the way
here.
Things are
whether we're taking it on the chin or enjoying the luxury of it, it's there's nothing I can do about it, so I try not to spend much time thinking about the things I can't affect.
What I don't understand, Alan, is they say that there's people starving in this country, you know, which I find very hard to believe, because this is a good country, this. And it's not a country that would allow people to literally starve to death. And I think there is, you know, there is help out there for lots of people. You've got food banks, for example, but you know, when you hear of people living in dire poverty, no doubt that is the case. And I suppose it must be a struggle for the government, in a way, to try and solve that issue. You know, and I don't know. But I think this country, personally, I think it's a very generous country, you know.
Well, like lots of other places, it's good and bad simultaneously. There are lots of things about this country that are absolutely brilliant. There are some things about this country where some people believe the country is failing its citizens.
Yeah, I do honestly believe it's a fabulous country. I can't knock it in that respect, but you know, I don't know. It's you know, but you hear these stories, you know, that people are living on the breadline and people are living in poverty. I mean, go back in the 50s. We don't remember that, won't we, Alan? The way you know, what was the old saying? Britain never had it so good.
Harold Macmillan, the then Prime Minister, said, "You've never had it so good."
Yeah, that's way back, isn't it, pal? But I don't know. I think it's great. I mean, it's a good country. I mean, I love it. I mean, but I think you've got to abide to certain rules and laws within reason, you know.
Well, not within reason. You need to obey the laws. You don't obey them within reason. In other words, I'll decide whether the law's reasonable and decide whether to obey it or not. We have an obligation to obey the law, whether we think it's reasonable or not.
The reason why I say that, Alan, is because what me and my partner did back in 2014, we absconded.
You didn't?
I use the word absconded because that's what we did. We escaped the system.
To abscond? Well, you didn't escape the system. You just weren't in the system. You just moved somewhere else.
Yeah, we went somewhere else, and the laws were a little bit different where we were, and in Ireland things were different, and things were more laid back, you know, and in a happy media way, because now that we do see our little boy, you know, and that to me is, you know, I think it's great that, because we've got this
I'm intrigued. You appear to be telling me that you now live in the United Kingdom with your partner, but your little boy, as you just described him, lives in Ireland.
Yes, he's a little Irishman.
Well, he may well be. But when you say my little boy, you seem to be implying that he's a small person, and I don't think you mean short in stature. Age, yeah. He's 9 years of age. So your child of 9 years of age lives neither with you or your partner in this country, but actually lives in Ireland.
That's correct, Alan. People frown upon that, and I have to accept the fact that, you know, because...
Well, presumably he's not living alone in Ireland. Presumably he has somebody...
Foster carers.
Right.
He's in foster care.
Right.
I mean, we get on great with them, you know, and we work with them, they work with us, which is amicable all round. And for our little boy, you know, and you know, for our little fella, you know, it's paramount importance that he is being well looked after, and I'm happy with that, Alan. And he's getting all his medical attention because he is autistic, our little boy.
Right.
You know, and you know, he's an intelligent little fella, but you know, he's intrigued by wheels and tractors and motor cars. He's in that environment and the horses, you know. He's in the nature part of Ireland. And I think that, you know, it's great that for a child, you know, and maybe that could have happened here, you know, over here in England. But, you know, but here again, if we'd have stayed here and had our little boy, and sadly we would have had our little boy taken from us. I think I mentioned it to you before about our little daughter, but she was adopted without parental consent, and she'll be 13 this Wednesday, you know, and she'll be 13 years of age. She was gone from us at the age of 2. So,
and the authorities, you may not have agreed with their decision, but the authorities will have had a reason for that.
It's still debatable, that, Alan, because we're still looking into it, you know. I've got some really good friends that's in the medical field of work. And even they criticised, but they can't criticise about the system with the NHS, obviously, and I understand that puts their job on the line. But I have all the definitive proof about X-rays and everything, and the feedback I get is, Steve, you know, so your little boy, your little girl shouldn't have been taken for that. And, you know, it was an accident, but deemed... But I could go into another story with that one, Al, but it's a long one.
The authorities believe that your children suffered at his parents' home.
Oh, yes, they did. They said it was a non-accidental injury. We took our little girl, because we suspected that she may have had a fall, an accidental fall. But it was deemed non-accidental. But we couldn't prove otherwise, Alan. That's what the difficulties was. And sadly, our argument, obviously, it would be against, you know, the state authorities to make that predicament through the courts and everything. But, you know, you could bang your head against the wall and have, you know, the biggest professionalism around you, you know, solicitors and barristers. But they'll say the same thing, that the child care and procedures in this country is very strict. And, you know, the child is put first in the best interest of the child. So what you've got to look at, you've got to hope and pray that your child's being well looked after. And if she has, you know, adopted, just hope that she's got a good home and a good environment to live up. and that she'd get a good education and good everything that goes with it for the child's upbringing. You know, and I can see all the fundamental aspects of a child. I mean, we love children, you know, because I go down to a family in Bedford and there's babies there, you know, and they treat me as a dad, you know, and my partner's left me now. She lives down south and she's moved on. So I've had to accept that, Al. And, you know, but I'm in that environment of their family, you know, and I've been accepted as that. And I think that's brilliant. And of course, my partner, she's involved with children down there. She can't have any babies. If she did, she'd have a baby taken off her. And she accepts that. That's the issue. We're not the only ones. There's thousands of us out there, Alan.
And would it be the same if you were to take up with another partner?
Oh, yes. If I was to move on, I'm too old now, Al. I'm a little bit old in the tooth, long in the tooth. But if that was the case, yeah, if I was to meet a partner and went on to have a child, then I'd be in the same predicament.
So the child would be taken from you?
Yes, definitely, Alan, unfortunately. But, you know, that's the rules and the laws, and obviously the child care protection. Don't get me wrong, Al. I agree with certain aspects of that rule in the law.
So when you, earlier on, when you said we absconded from the country, I'm beginning to feel that perhaps that is what you did. You went to Ireland to be beyond the control of the British courts so that the courts couldn't take your child from you.
Thank you. But we couldn't get away from the Interpol. But they were, you know...
Well, that was what happened.
In our Garda,
you left the country.
We got pulled by armed guards. We actually got stopped on the border between Northern Ireland. We're in Devlin, and we got pulled over by a Mitsubishi pickup. It was an unmarked vehicle. And another purple, I forget, some other vehicle, came in front of our car, and the Mitsubishi pickup. It's actually seen it turn around as I looked through my mirror. And I seen the little blue lights in the grill, and I said, "This vehicle's following us up here." And this car cut across us in front of us just before we got to the bridge of going over a river. I forget the name.
So when you left the country, going back to the word absconded, that is precisely what you did do, and the authorities, in your view wrongly, but nonetheless, the authorities were of the view that you were a serious risk to your children to such an extent that they were prepared to engage the forces of law and order in another country to track you down. And
may I say, yes, you're right, you're correct, Alan, and may I say that the police over there were brilliant. They were absolutely, if anything, they turned around and said, good luck with the pregnancy, hope you love you, stay over here, and you know, and they were very courteous. I mean, when you've got a man, or a policeman, Garda, standing in front of you with a gun, you know, a rifle, standing in front of the vehicle of your car, that was very scary at the time because we just didn't know. You know, I mean, the law procedures over there with the borders, you know, between North and South, even though we were in part of the EU, it was very daunting at the time, and the policeman came and took the keys out of my vehicle, you know. He said, we're just going to do some checks. Which he did, and he came back. He said, where's your keys back? He said, all I'm going to say to you now is I wish you and your partner good luck, and keep your nose clean, and good luck to you. And I thought to myself, and even the lad with the gun, we spotted him one day, and we seen him, you know, because when my partner had the baby, our little boy, we said, our little boy, and he put his thumbs up, you know, and he said, fantastic. That, to me, was an element of relief and an acceptance, you know, Alan. And I thought, well, we made a lot of friends over there, you know. Mm-hmm. And you could ask the question, why did we come back? Well, I had to come back because I got a disabled sister. So a combination of two things, Alan. It's a bit complicated, but we come to a mutual agreement, you know. Had we just stayed in Ireland, Alan, our little boy would have been in our care now. Yeah. But
One
made.
Interpretation of that was I forfeited my child so that I could look after my sister.
Yeah, that's correct, Alan. Yeah, and they accepted that, and nothing went to court, nothing happened in that respect, and we did everything amicably. We worked with them, they worked with us, and that made me happy and my partner happy because And I said, well, we may have lost one, but we certainly haven't lost. We haven't lost our little girl. She's there somewhere, but it's the not knowing. You know what I mean, Alan? Because it's like a bereavement. You lose somebody in that respect, but they're alive. But you live a kind of a bereavement. From the day when she was taken from us. And the thing is, you've got to take it on the chin. You got to take the rough with the smooth. You can twist this around in a million circles, and you always come back to square one. So you've got to live with it, Al. You've got to live with it, and of course, here again, we do get a letterbox every 12 months. They tell us brief details about our little girl. And the thing is, it is only brief details as well, Alan. It could be a lot longer, but it's the way it's been photocopied. It's the way it's been, what's the word they use? Copy and pasted,
Cut and paste.
But the thing is, we've come to a sort of an agreement, me and my partner, She gets married in July, and I say good luck to you. She's younger than me, you see, Al. And the thing is, I have to accept that, and I do accept it because, I'm not getting any younger. So you've got to give way sometimes. That's part of life. And if you do it in that amicably way, life can be a bit smooth,
Well, every life has elements of it that aren't smooth. But, Stephen, good to hear from you. How do Joe?
Hello.
Hello.
You're right, Alan.
Yeah, you need to sort your radio out. How do Jacqueline?
Good evening, Alan. Oh, good morning, in fact. Theme tunes from programmes.
Okay.
Did you ever watch Tinker, Soldier, Sailor, Spy?
No, I didn't. I wish I had, because it was supposed to be very
with
good.
Alec Guinness. And there was a lovely, lovely tune. I think his name was Paul Phoenix. And he used to sing Nunc Dimittis. Beautiful, beautiful voice. I think that if he'd been born in Italy, he would have been castrated to keep that voice. That's what they used to do, wasn't it, in Italy?
A long time ago. I
yeah, but Nunc Dimittis, Paul Phoenix, Tinker, Soldier, Sailor, Spy. Lovely. Good night.
Good night. How do William?
Oh, yeah, Alan. The other night, I think it was last night, you were saying that you remember was it Radio Manchester many years ago, something to do with a brass band programme?
I don't remember talking about a brass band programme recently, but go on.
Yeah, well, I think years ago in the early 80s, it was called Brass Tacks.
Well, there was a program called Brass Tacks, but I think that was a documentary program.
Well, I think I'm sure I remember it being on Radio Manchester many years ago.
Well, it may have been. There may have been a brass band program. In fact, I seem to recall there was a brass band program, but brass. I don't know what it was called, but Brass Tacks was a documentary program on the BBC back in the 70s through to the 90s, I think.
No, I just wondered when you talked about something last night about it. And the other thing is, when you talk about records, about theme tunes and that, and you're saying one was Vanderbilt, was it?
Somebody mentioned Vanderbilt, yeah.
high level, weren't it? High level of
that was
Simon
it, yeah.
Park.
High level, yeah, that's what it was called, yeah.
Yeah, and it got to number 1 at the time.
Yeah, I seem to recall it. Yeah, it was a good tune.
Yeah,
good tune with shots of Holland, wasn't it? Because it was set in Holland, so shots of Amsterdam, which is a very pretty city.
Yeah, I think I had the vinyl, the single at the time, because it got to number 1.
Yeah?
Yeah. That's all it is. That's all I phoned up about.
Well, that's plenty. Thank you very much. Have a good night, Joe. William, I'll do Joe. You sound like you're in a vehicle and it's moving. Never mind. That's clearly not usable. Sorry, the signal's appalling. And if you are in a vehicle and it's moving, I hope to God you're not driving. Because that would be very, very silly indeed. 0800 218 2255. You want to join us, you can. We're here for the next 7 minutes of this time. Rebecca Vardy, remember her? She's trying to readdress the image she's managed to create for herself with the disastrous libel case against another wag. This time it's apparently, according to Rebecca Vardy, all because she was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. My heart bleeds for her. And as a member of no God-bothering group, I'm allowed to do that if I choose. Very odd. Anyway, there. So apparently she is what she is because she was brought up. She is how she is, not what she is. My apologies. She is how she is because she was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. I have no idea. I wasn't brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know what it involves. They used to, didn't they? They used to go round knocking on people's doors and offering to sell them a book and welcome them into their belief system. And I've not seen them for years. I mean, maybe they stopped for COVID and they've not got around to it again, or maybe they do it via some other technical process these days. I don't know. It's very strange. Tell with it. Let's play Phil. If you prefer, only it's easy, lover. I added the go, but then I'm a go-getter. I'll do Christine.
I think that's your theme tune, isn't it?
I think it's very close to my theme tune. My mother would say it shouldn't be easy, lover. It should be lazy bugger. But anyway, what can we do for you, Christine?
No, I just wanted to say hello and good night because I think you're going up in a minute or two, and I've spoken to you a few times in the past, and you're a star like James Stamage.
Oh dear God, that's a bit shameful. Thank you, Christine. I'll do Isidor.
Right. Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hello, yeah, now, basically what I want to get through to is, we had the local elections recently, a couple of weeks ago. I'm not being personal, I'm not going to mention any names in any areas, because obviously that might not be right. But how is it that the government allows this to happen? They give me promises about potholes in the streets, about lighting, about police force. The minute they've got into the seats, you don't see anything for it. It's gone out to, you know what I mean?
How did he get away with it? Because...
How did they get away with it? Yeah, go on.
The electorate seems to want cheap government, and cheap government means not getting everything that you might want. You get what you pay for, and we pay for cheap government.
Well, that sounds good, but it's going on and on and on. The reason why we turn up at the ballot box is we want to see something. You know, you've got the potholes in the street. They're always yanking on about that. And you've got your police force. You don't see them around for nothing. The roads are getting dirtier and dirtier by the day. And nothing's happening. You're paying your tax. You know. And then nothing's happening. I mean, why is the government sitting down in the street? How is it they're allowing this to carry on year after year after year?
Because they seem able to get away with it, Isidor. But nice to hear from you. Thank you very much. It's time for us to go, I'm afraid. I'd love to talk to you for longer, but regrettably I cannot. And all we can say is we get the government that we, in a way, choose, which is not quite accurate, because we often choose something different and get forced off with this. I'll be back on Saturday night at 10. I hope you will too. Still then, have a good week.
BBC News at 1 o'clock. This is Nick Qureshi. Both sides in Turkey's presidential election claim to be in the lead. Counting's continuing after an extremely tight race that could see Recep Tayyip Erdogan ousted after 20 years in power. If neither he nor his challenger Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu secure 50% of the vote, there'll be a runoff. Our Middle East correspondent Anna Foster says the result may not be known for some time.
And there are complaints about recounts in certain areas. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu made a statement a short time ago. He said that in some areas